So. 7 shades of sunlight. That's what it called itself. Evelyn used the same intonation one might employ to query a dog as to why it has jumped into a puddle of liquid pig manure. And she's gay, Rain reminded us. Don't forget that part. Seemed kinda relevant. Evelyn made a sound like she was trying to crack a walnut with her throat. Yes, clearly this whole situation is not only dangerous beyond our ability to handle, it's also astoundingly stupid. Not exactly the most encouraging words I'd hoped to hear, not while I stood half-naked in the middle of a magic circle, shivering with exhaustion, hunger, skin creeping cold, brain math aftershock, and abyssal dysphoria. All in all, I was not having a good time. The chill air of Evelyn's magical workshop raised prickling goosebumps across my bare arms and exposed shoulders and naked belly, despite the overworked gas cylinder space heater pointed directly at me. Rain had hauled it in here earlier, after Evelyn's repeated magical failures had dropped the ambient temperature and she'd still insisted I strip down. The gas cylinder powering the space heater weighed an absolute ton, probably hadn't been used since the 1980s, and also likely constituted a significant fire hazard. The thing poured out heat like an ocean floor thermal vent, but it still couldn't drive away the deep tissue pain in my bruised flanks as they blossomed purple and black. I managed a sheepish smile, as if I should apologize for how stupid everything had become. Hey now, Rain said. Stupid? It all happened, Evie, I saw it too. Yes, yes. Evelyn squinted her eyes shut as if she had a headache, and drummed her fingertips on the handle of her walking stick. Stupid is a metaphor, have you never heard of figurative language? I don't doubt your accounts. Or should I, seeing as this thing can direct people's behavior? The shaman has a stalker, wizard, Zheng purred from where she lounged by the doorway to the kitchen. Be precise. Evelyn laughed. Actually laughed, which would have worried me deeply if I wasn't so physically and emotionally wiped out. Why bother, she said. I don't know if you've noticed up there on Mount Bloody Olympus, but I'm a bit outclassed by all this. It's not your fault, Evie Weevy, Lozzie chirped. I can't see sevens either. Evelyn blinked as if slapped. Her emotional processing could not digest Lozzie-style encouragement, so after a moment she just cleared her throat as if it hadn't happened. Evie, Rain said, gentle but firm. What's the next step, where are we at? Where are we at? Evelyn echoed, as if this was the most inane question she'd ever heard. She gestured at me. Heather has the outsider equivalent of an insufferable theater kid following her around, because she wants your prospective threesome to look good in her scriptwriting portfolio. This thing ignores my wards, can wear our faces, is probably lurking somewhere in this house right now, and I can't bloody well find it no matter how hard I prod Heather. She waggled her walking stick at my semi-nudity. That is where we are at. Sorry, I croaked. Oh, and yes, before I forget again, she's gay. Whatever gay means in this thing's biological and sociological context. I suspect that knowledge would drive us all screaming mad. Gay is gay, Lozzie provided. G-A-A, Tenny trilled from her safe distance spot, just over the threshold of the kitchen doorway. Jing glanced down at her, which was apparently enough to provoke a soft warning hiss and lazy snapping threat display from Tenny's tentacles. I didn't tell Jing off. For one, I didn't have the energy. More importantly, every moment Jing spent teasing Tenny was one less moment she and Rain locked eyes across the room. Their silent face-off had been evolving at the periphery of my awareness, ever since our explanation of events on campus had covered 7 shades opinion on our Cold War ménage trois. I know, I croaked, dead-voiced, mostly to myself, indulging in a spot of passive aggression for which I was too tired to chastise myself. Forgive me, my standard of stupidity is little skewed lately. My life is a joke. I must have sounded more depressed than I thought, because everyone else went awkwardly quiet. Spinning armchair theory. Literally back in the medieval metaphysics room, that was all well and good, but hope seemed thinner in my heart after I'd trudged all the way home, bone-tired and shivering, bruises blossoming in my flanks, ravenously hungry and racked with guilt and abyssal dysphoria. Before we'd left the medieval metaphysics room, Lozzie had pronounced me altogether inside, and fit to travel, but by the time we came within sight of home I felt like I'd been filled with broken glass and hit with a bus. Rain had given me a piggyback ride the last 2 streets. It aggravated my bruises no matter how gentle she carried me. At home, the first thing I'd done was inhale an entire leftover meal worth of curry and chips. Very healthy, I'm sure my mother would be proud of her daughter's diet. I'd chased that with half a packet of chocolate cookies and 3 whole apples, but my body still complained as if I hadn't eaten all day. 7 Shades was right. I was small and fragile and weak. And now I'd spent almost an hour standing in the workshop as the air temperature dropped every time Evelyn muttered grumpy Latin over me. She'd instructed Preem in chalking an increasingly complex magic circle around my feet, adding more symbols here, staggered layers there, erasing parts and trying new ones, as if I was an esoteric contaminant which required successively thicker containment. One piece of magic after the other had failed to any produce results see except to freeze me down to my bones. I'd felt somehow responsible and Evelyn had gotten more and more frustrated, then eventually she'd had me peel off my hoodie and t-shirts, reduced me down to my underwear, and begun pressing hastily drawn sigils directly to the goose-pimpled flesh of my stomach or lower back, hoping that the right scrap of magic would flush 7 shades of sunlight out of my system like an exotic intestinal parasite. I did hope that's not what the containment was for, my dignity was already in the toilet. Feeling like meat on a slab didn't help. To say I did not have much confidence in my scrawny, pale, weird little body would be the understatement of my life. 6 months ago, the idea of standing half-naked in front of several other girls would have induced a coma. But, well, these were my friends. Evelyn had seen this before, Lozzie and I had curled up to sleep together in less, neither Preem nor Tenny gave a hoot, and for some mad reason I still barely understood, Rain actually found me attractive. No accounting for taste, I suppose. Only Zheng's attention would have made me blush like a beetroot see if I'd felt human. After the euphoria of my perfect rainbow-strobing tentacles and the blissful clarity of abyssal senses and the fleeting half-glimpsed beauty of 7 shades of sunlight, to be stripped out of my hoodie and layered t-shirts to get poked and prodded made me feel like a dirty little grub peeled out of my shell. Reduced, bruised, raw. Half of me wanted to curl up in a secluded dark place, but the other half of me screamed to move. To dance, to jump onto the table, to spin my arms around in circles like a child, though any of those actions would likely end up with me on my backside, and absolutely make me a lot colder than I already was. I kept looking down at myself, at the slowly blossoming bruises on my flanks where my tentacles had been anchored, at the twitching of my stomach, at the way my bones linked together inside my flesh. I was dying to just feel the motion of my own muscles, the flex of my tendons, the pump of my blood, to capture whatever echo of grace and beauty I could squeeze out of my twisted little ape body. I held fast to that desire. Probably better than the opposite. Lozzie had sensed my discomfort without having to ask. As Evelyn had set to work on my exposed flesh, Lozzie had scampered out of the workshop and returned with a big towel. She'd held it up to shield me, like we were schoolgirls in the changing rooms, trying to mitigate the indignity of PE. No peeking, she'd chirped back over her shoulder at Zheng, and then at Rain as well, then did a side-to-side head wiggle at Preem. You too. You're done helping, so step away from the patient and in front of the curtain, please. Preem had responded by looking to Evelyn, who was busy scribbling the latest of a dozen magical sigils and signs to press against my lower back. Yes, whatever, Evelyn had grumbled. Preem had marched over to join Rain and Zheng in the peanut gallery. Peeking. Rain smirked. I don't have to peek, I get the full frontal whenever I want. Not right now you don't. Lozzie stuck her tongue out. Thank you, I croaked. Just feeling self-conscious, right now. There was no way I could find the energy to explain the intricacies of what I actually felt, so that would have to do for now. Your bruises are beautiful, shaman, Zheng purred. They are proof you grow, proof you are. No need to hide. I cleared my throat and felt a faint heat in my cheeks. The ghost of normal, healthy self-consciousness moved through me, sexual self-consciousness, not countering the abyssal fascination with my own body but complementing it, melding like milk and oil. Lozzie must have seen the change in my face. She caught my eye and giggled. "You just wanna ogle my girl." "Admit it, zombie brains," Rain said with the corner of her mouth. "I do not see you stopping me, Yashu." Zheng was not ogling me at all, even though all she could see was my head above Lozzie's towel. She'd locked eyes with Rain again. "Ah, so you do think like the rest of us, huh?" Rain asked. "Guess we got that in common." "There is nothing unclean in the love of flesh," Zheng purred back. "Oh, love." Rain shot Zheng a look of amused doubt. "Four-letter word, that one. Sure you want to go there? Mockery cannot touch truth." That told them. Lozzie suppressed another giggle by ducking her face below the towel. Rain and Zheng both did as they were told, though with much wiggling of eyebrows from the former and a silent level stare from the latter. Helped me though. Even through the aches and pains and echoes of abyssal dysphoria, a certain warmth filled me at the sight of the two most attractive women in my life verbally sparring over me. It sent the weird little part of me that would be forever 14 years old into a squealing fit of sexual overload, and I felt a little bit more like myself, in my own body, no matter how inadequate it was. But then they had to be quiet, and I had nothing to distract me from ruminating on what 7 Shades of Sunlight had said. Evelyn had given up, erased a wide patch of the chalk-drawn magic circle, and sat down. I'd wallowed in self-pity. "My life is a joke," I'd said. Now, self-conscious, I said, "Sorry." The long moment of awkward silence ended and Evelyn cleared her throat and to my incredible surprise attempted a little laugh. "You think your life is absurd, Heather?" She shook her head. "Well, I suppose I should take some consolation. This conversation would make my mother spin in her grave, if her corpse wasn't bound in irons." "Hey, Heather," Rain said, soft and understanding, "everything I ever wanted. It's gonna be alright, yeah. We're gonna make it alright." "Not a joke, shaman," Zheng purred. "You walk the narrow path. You look down. You do not fall." "Do not fall," Preem intoned a perfect musical bell note. All I could think was what Preem's voice might sound like in the abyss. "Was that supposed to help?" Evelyn asked Preem. "No, don't answer that, I don't want to know." She cleared her throat again and gestured at me with a jerk of her walking stick. "Go on, Heather, put your hoodie back on, you're freezing your tits off and making me feel cold just looking at you." "I can't find anything wrong with you, this is a waste of time." "Fluff," said Lozzie, which was apparently the accompanying sound effect for her wrapping the towel around my shoulders. The fluffy towel had soaked up much more of the space heater's output than my permafrost flesh seemed capable of, and the sudden engulfing warmth drew an embarrassing noise from my throat. I submitted to clumsy intimacy and confused wriggling as Lozzie helped me get dressed. She got my t-shirt and hoodie back over my head without pulling the towel away, a feat that surely involved some kind of transdimensional trickery. I kept trying to cling to her body heat. She took the hint and took the opportunity to hug me, sliding hands and arms up my back under my clothes, nuzzling her face into my shoulder. She smelled of coconut shampoo and tenny's fur, and her wispy golden hair tickled my nose. "Stay," I murmured. "Heather's in the clear, then?" Rain asked. I opened one eye to look over Lozzie's shoulder, and attempted to say Evelyn's name, or perhaps some variation of "What is wrong with me, dear friend?" But what I actually did was let out this weird gurgle sound that made everyone look at me. I was too tired and too cold to care. I tried again, and made a human noise instead. "Haunted?" Yeah, Evie, what does that mean?" Rain prompted. She came over to me and Lozzie and put a protective hand on the back of my neck. Evelyn shrugged with force enough to invent a new sport that involved throwing heavy objects with one's shoulders. I was vaguely worried she might hurt her back. How should I know, she said. Nothing I've attempted has worked. Nothing is following Heather, or attached to her, or circling overhead like a vulture, or maybe it is, and all my techniques are useless. So why not? Why not blame it on ghosts? Do you have a better idea? Went Rain. No. Wizard, Jing rumbled. Try harder. And you can shut up too, Evelyn said at her. If you have a better idea, then I'm a professional long-distance runner. With much clattering of chair and popping of stiff joints and muttering under her breath, Evelyn levered herself to her feet and stomped over to the kitchen doorway. Tenny let out a trilling noise and scurried clear of Evelyn's path, silken black tentacles trailing after her like jellyfish tendrils in ocean water. Evie, I croaked from Lozzie's shoulder. Am I dash? We're done here, I need a cup of tea, she shot back without turning around. What about the trophy? Rain asked. I winced inside. Droppings, Jing rumbled. Spoor, to track by. Hey, Rain said. That's not a bad idea for somebody with rotten meat between her ears. They meant the piece of yellow cloth, the fragment from 7 Shades of Sunlight. Upon arrival in the medieval metaphysics room, Evelyn had treated the shriveled scrap of yellow fabric like radioactive waste. As Lozzie had checked my lungs and chest and back for internal damage by pressing her hands against me, Evelyn had drawn a magic circle around the mysterious yellow shred. She'd had Preem wrap it up in a plastic supermarket carrier bag, then covered the bag in magic sigils drawn on strips of masking tape, mostly small variations on the fractal. When we'd arrived home and I'd been busy stuffing my face with enough calories to kill an elephant, Evelyn had been poking at our trophy. Now the piece of yellow cloth lay on the table in the workshop, next to the television hooked up to the slowly slopping squid clay thing in the corner, and the stacks of notes about retargeting the gateway. The cut-open bag and the sigil paper lay about it like the remains of a cracked egg, the slip of yellow a malformed, stillborn lizard in the center of the debris. Yes, I already tried that, Evelyn grumbled as she stomped into the kitchen and left us behind. Her voice floated back to us. I'm not completely stupid, despite all evidence to the contrary. It's nothing. Cotton. Inert. Or maybe it's a bomb, who knows? Or if you dunk it in water, perhaps it'll sing. We'll put it on the telly, get rich. Preem, come here, please. I need that cup of tea before I swallow my own tongue. Evie. Hey, Evie. Rain half moved to follow her, but was reluctant to leave me behind. I was still clinging to Lozzie like a wounded animal leaning on a packmate. Oh dear, I managed. Yeah, somebody's pissed in her Cheerios, Rain murmured. I can hear you. Evelyn raised her voice from the kitchen. Rain looked back at me and pulled a pained grimace. I tried to smile, but nothing happened. Wanna follow her and go sit down? Rain asked. You alright to move? Yes, I'm on the mend. I must sit down now though, yes. Good idea, Lozzie whispered. Come on then, let's get some more food in front of you, Rain said, gesturing for us to depart the workshop, away from all the grisly reminders and arcane detritus. Between Lozzie's arm around my middle, Rain's familiar invitation before me, Zhang's slow predatory look, and a promise of some bizarre argument with Evelyn in the kitchen, I suddenly felt worryingly normal. As if I was about to slip back into a routine rehearsed many times before, a performance I'd played out day after day. An ephemeral sensation, fleeting as déjà vu. A shiver went down my spine. What if this is what she wants? I murmured. What was that? Rain asked. But my eyes were drawn to the scrap of yellow fabric on the table, a newborn dead thing waiting to be cleaned of afterbirth mucus. With no little reluctance I disentangled one arm from around Lozzie, and reached out toward the shattered nest. Heather. Rain took my arm, gently but firmly. Whoa, Heather, should you be touching that? The shaman knows, Jing rumbled. It's fine, I murmured, still staring into the yellow depths. "Rain, let go." "It's just," Evie said, "it's only cotton." "Then why do you want to touch it?" she asked. "Because I need more." Past me, Rain shared a glance with Lozzie, and in the corner of my eye, Lozzie screwed up her mouth into a thinky face, then nodded several times. "All right then," Rain said. "If that's what you need." "Lozzie, you ready?" "Ready." Lozzie chirped. Rain let go of my arm, and I picked up the scrap of yellow infinity. I was not struck blind and deaf and dumb, or paralyzed by lightning, or riven with disgust as if handling a live slug. The piece of 7 shades was, after all, just fabric, too coarse for silk but not rough enough to be wool. Perhaps it really was cotton, or some unknowable outside material. It lay limp in my hand, a dried leaf leached of all chlorophyll. There was nothing to see here, nothing to feel. Heavy disappointment settled on my heart, a tightening inside my chest. Maisie and I had both always been voracious readers. In the years before the I took her away, we begun to venture beyond the walled garden of children's literature, sometimes alone and sometimes together, often without our parents' knowledge. When there were 2 of us, there was always somebody with which to discuss the story. To continue it in private whispers after dark, to imagine lives for the characters, better endings or other endings or things that happened off-screen. But after Wonderland, by myself, alone, in the brief respites between psychiatric hospitals and oft-terminated bouts of school attendance and the never-ending horror of my hallucinations, I became intimately familiar with the bittersweet pain of the close of a great story, of the emotional pressure front it leaves behind, the need to retread, to see past the ending. 7 Shades play had left me depressed and defeated, but it was as strong as any beauty in narrative. I needed to see more. I needed to watch it again, and find the gaps in the story. I needed to rewrite the ending. But the yellow scrap was just cotton. 7 Shades was not here. I wondered, what would this piece of cloth look like through abyssal senses? I could find out, if I wanted to give myself another seizure and probably earn a trip to the hospital. "Hey, Heather, you in there?" Rain asked. "She's all here." Lozzie chirped. "I'm fine," I lied, then scrubbed my eyes with the back of my hand. "It's just cotton. There's nothing here. Not like this." In the kitchen, Preem already had the kettle on. Rain and Lozzie got me maneuvered into a chair with a minimum of fuss, while Jing stalked in after us and upset Tenny without trying, drawing another warning display from her tentacles in a fluttery, retreating hiss as she bounced away on springy, muscled legs, twirling her wings like a cloak. Lozzie told Jing off with a tut and soothed Tenny by fluffing her fur, then pulled a chair close to me so she could lean against my shoulder. Everyone bustled about, and Evelyn gave a dismissive response to a question from Rain, but I wasn't listening. All I could think about was this fragment torn from 7 Shades of Sunlight. I kept running my fingers over the fabric to feel the loose fibers, rolling it between thumb and forefinger as if that would teach me what it was made of, half resisting an urge to sniff it or press it to my cheek. 7 Shades of Sunlight possessed a physical form. I was holding a piece of it, no different to a chunk of bloody flesh carved from a human flank. But she was also an abyssal thing. She was both. Like me. A slow hunger woke in the back of my mind. A scab, itching to be picked. A desperate need. Eventually I noticed that a cup of tea had appeared in front of me, along with a microwaved pastry and some sliced apple. My stomach rumbled, so I shoved some food in my mouth, barely tasted it, then finally realized that an uncomfortable silence had descended on the kitchen. Rain and Zhang were staring at each other across the length of the room, expressions still and stoic like a pair of gunfighters in an old western, each waiting for the other to draw first. Steam from Rain's own mug of tea drifted in front of her face. Zheng lounged against the wall with all the deceptive relaxation of a cunning predator, eyes heavy-lidded like some jungle lizard. Evelyn sat opposite me, sad gaze cast down into a mug of oil-dark tea, Preem at her shoulder, perfectly crisp and starched in her maid uniform. Tenny felt the tension with senses keener than human. She'd slunk close to Lozzie and I to sneak a slice of apple with one of her tentacle mouths, then froze and hunched as if about to wrap herself in her natural optical camouflage. Cuddled up to my side, almost purring, Lozzie was the only one who seemed unaffected. The room was like a painting. Oh. My heart skipped a beat. Is it happening again? Heather? Rain turned to me first and broke the impression. Evelyn frowned my way and I could have kissed her. Jing did not look away from Rain, but that didn't matter now. I'd assumed the awkward stillness was the prelude to another act of Seven Shades production. The moment of quiet as the lights dim, before the curtain goes up. Oh, okay, I breathed, hand to my chest, to my racing heart. It's just us all being a disaster. Tenny, it's okay, I called out softly, and Tenny bobbed her head from side to side in curiosity. Relax, nobody's going to do anything. Heath, Tenny fluttered. Air. Heather, what is it? Rain asked. I thought it was happening again. Another play. The next part of the play, right here. I don't know. I gestured at the room, the yellow scrap still in my shaking hand. The tone. The aura. It's not though, it's not. She's not here. Everyone watch your behavior for a sec, Rain announced to the others. Keep your eyes open. She's not here, I said, my voice tinged with unexpected disappointment. I want to meet Sevens too, said Lozzie. A moment of horrible tension crawled up my spine and ran bony fingers across my scalp, even with Lozzie's warmth pressed to my side, as I waited for the telltale flicker of yellow cloth or the glint of sunlight on bronze. But 30 seconds passed, then a minute, and nothing happened. No scent, Zheng purred eventually. Yeah, nothing doing, Rain confirmed with a sigh. She shrugged. Guess we're overreacting, yeah. What are we going to do about this? I croaked. We can't just wait for it to happen again. You think we should check out those people that Seven Shades used in the English class? Rain asked. Might give us more clues. Clues, Evelyn grumbled, as if that was the most stupid word she'd ever heard. I don't know, perhaps, I said. Do you think there might be lasting damage to them? Rain squinted in thought and took a sip from her own cup of tea, waiting for Evelyn to leap in. When she didn't, Rain shrugged and carried on. Hard to tell. Wouldn't mind conducting a thorough investigation of some of those volunteers though. The short one, she was cute. TCH, Rain, I tooted, but my heart wasn't in it. Evie, are you okay? Peachy, she said, in the tone one might use to announce a terminal disease. What do we do about Seven Shades of Sunlight? Evelyn managed a feat I'd rarely seen from a human being, a full-body shrug, with shoulders, eyebrows, mouth, even her fingertips. Pray. I blinked at her. She took a very long sip of tea and clunked her mug back onto the table. What do you want me to suggest, Heather? She sounded more defeated than angry. There's a true outsider loose in Sherrowford, apparently following you around. It doesn't obey the rules of our reality, doesn't give a damn about my wards, and can manipulate behavior in the totally uninvolved. The fact this thing hasn't already popped our heads like grapes or, I don't know, made us all have an orgy or something, that's probably a good sign. Probably. Rain laughed. Honestly, Rain, for once, your guess is as good as mine. The mere fact we're all still alive is probably a good sign, but might just mean it wants to torture us first. It was like torture, I admitted. But I don't think she meant it like that, she had a point, a good point. Bound hard in my own guilt and pain, I'd been a terrible friend again. It was only then I noticed how hard Evelyn was gripping the handle of her tea mug. Her knuckles had gone white. Evie. Oh, Evie, I didn't think you need you. You're terrified, Evie, Rain said, far more gently than I'd expected, in the kind of tone she'd used to soothe me in one of my worst moments. Don't be. That's why I'm here, right? If I thought this thing was a danger to you, I'd have found a way to stab it in the face already. Evelyn gave Rain a look like she had just grown a second head. Don't do that, Rain. Don't get weird on me. Rain shrugged, a wry grin on her lips. Do what? Speak to me like that. You haven't in years. 7 Shades did something for me too. Reminded me what matters. Yeah, let's go with that. Anyway, this thing only hurt us emotionally, and we all know you're too hard on yourself already for it to find any purchase with you. Evelyn actually laughed, a derisive snort. And let go of your mug, you're gonna hurt your fingers, Rain added softly. Evelyn did as suggested, hands trembling, massaging her fingers. Our first expedition outside and we bring back a stowaway, and I can't even find the compartment it used, let alone contain it. So yes, Rain, it shouldn't come as a surprise that I am rather stressed right now. I don't think she wants to hurt us, I repeated. I agree, Evelyn said curtly. Oh. If 7 Shades of whatever can ignore my wards, she could have done anything she wanted to us already, Evelyn explained. We may simply have to live with for the moment, until you figure out the right mathematical equation to pull her heart out through her mouth. I grimaced, but Evelyn ignored me and went on. Outsiders are inscrutable, perhaps untouchable. But mages are not. Ah, went Rain. Jean grunted. Oh. Saldis, I said. Exactly, Evelyn hissed through gritted teeth. You have more than one uninvited visitor following you around, and we can access her physical body, it's on the other side of the gateway, in Carcosa. I will not have a mage piggybacking on your perceptions, hiding in your shadow. She is basically inside this house, and I will not have that. Death to all wizards, Jean rumbled. Present company accepted, I hope. Evelyn drawled at Jean, but didn't seem to expect an answer. We cannot deal with the yellow thing. We can deal with Saldis. So I suggest we do. Of course. More violence, I said with a pained sigh and a lump in my throat. Here's another one of my fears coming true. What? Evelyn squinted at me. I think I was hoping, on some level, that you'd know what to do. I was wretched and small and I did not deserve my friends. I wanted somebody else to take responsibility for once, and chase away the bad things, the ghosts and hallucinations and monsters. If I'd been less exhausted, I might have started crying. Instead, with a supreme effort of willpower that I knew I'd pay for later, I scraped together whatever scraps of energy I had left, and tried to do justice to the people in my life. There's something I need to tell you all, I said. Only physical exhaustion stopped my voice from shaking. Everyone looked at me. Even Tenny understood, slinking closer and wrapping a worried tentacle around my shin. But I faltered at the first hurdle. Where's Twill? She needs to hear this too, I have to tell everyone. I can't do this twice. Better that she's not here, Evelyn said. At least that way she'll live if our yellow friend decides to murder us all for the sake of drama. And it's Monday, Heather, I made Twill bugger off to class. I'm not having her drop an A-level grade because she wants to spend time with her useless older girl Dash. Evelyn bit off the second half of that word. Went Rain. Evelyn glared at her. Shut your mouth. I am not in the mood. I really need to tell everyone, I repeated. I have to, I can't not, I dash. Heather, Rain murmured. Just say it if you need to. It's okay. I will make it okay. I tried to swallow away the lump in my throat, looked around at my friends, and said, I'm going to kill all of you. Confused looks and puzzled frowns and a soft trilling noise from Tenny rather undercut my dramatic melancholy, so that I actually tripped over my next intended words with an absurd laugh. Oh dear, that's not right. I mean I'm going to dash. Good luck, Preem intoned. Yes, Good luck with that. Evelyn jabbed a thumb in Zheng's general direction. How are you going to handle her? Drop a nuclear bomb? No dash, I couldn't help but laugh, this entire moment had gone off the rails so quickly. I mean dash. I stared at her for a second, utterly wrong-footed. No. Evie, I mean, I'll be the death of you all, with this quest to rescue my sister from the eye. Oh. Oh. Right. Well. Evelyn cleared her throat. I sighed heavily. The misunderstanding had robbed me of all my gravitas, and everything came out very matter-of-fact. The play, what Seven Shades showed me, it was too real. It's one thing to make armchair theories about technical points of brain math, about improving my handling, but it's another to be faced with all the people I watched die on stage, and know it's going to be my fault. No, Preem intoned. We all stared at her. She stared back at me, and declined to elaborate. If that is what happens, shaman, then that is what happens, Jing purred. I am still yours. Not what she needs to hear right now, left hand, Rain replied. We're going to win, and you better believe that. Please never fight, I blurted out, more exasperated than depressed now. You too, please never fight. I never want to see that for real. Please. I did make an oath, shaman. It'll be okay, Heathy, Lozzie purred next to me, hugging me around the shoulders. I sighed again and wanted to put my face in my hands. My friends could not convince me that they were safe from my mistakes. But one person in the room understood that. Look at what you've achieved, Evelyn said. What? She gestured wide, in frustration, and she meant us. In the space of a few months. Maisie told me the same thing, gather your friends, but I don't understand what good it does. I mean I adore you all, yes, but dash. It means you're not alone, you blithering idiot. Evelyn lost her temper quickly, which oddly enough made me feel a bit better. Getting berated by a silver tongue didn't leave much room for self-pity. Do I have to spell it out for you? I do, don't I? God, I do hope Maisie is the one with the brains. Certainly seems like it. Evie. Hey, Evie, come on, Rain said. Heather's had a hell of a day, leave off, and you're in an adrenaline crash, you need to lie down or dash. Will you shut up, she snapped at Rain. It's difficult enough for me to put my thoughts in order without you being weird at me. Heather, tell her to stop, please, so I can actually finish my point sometime this year. I shrugged at Rain, a bit lost. Stop being weird, please. Never, Rain said, but she did shut her mouth. Evelyn rapped the table with a knuckle, as if to get my attention. What have you told me before, Heather? No dash, she stopped, thumped her open palm on the table which made Tenny jump and grimaced over a restart. No, better, what has your very presence in my life told me? Well. She didn't wait for an answer. That I'm not alone, that I don't have to solve problems alone. You have a technical problem, and you need technical solutions. Rain and Jing cooing at you might make you feel better in the short term, but what am I here for, HM? Look what else you've gathered, you think that's a human being clinging to you. She gestured at Lozzie snug against my side, then winced at herself. Bad phrasing, ugh. My apologies, Lauren, I am trying to illustrate a point. I get the point too. Lozzie chirped, apparently not offended at all. But Evie, I don't know what I'm doing, I barely have a plan, I'm going to get you all killed. She did actually pause there, but not for an answer. Her lips half-formed a few different words as her mind jammed on the next thought. Evie, I said. Your help, Lozzie's help, I know I can rely on you, but you always said I was going to have to be the one to fight the eye. In the end it'll be just me. Where did you get that, ugh? She held up a hand and made a very frustrated gesture at me. Heather, yes, you may have to be the one who strikes the blow, whatever form that blow takes, but you don't have to forge the sword all by yourself. Isn't that what your sister meant? There. Does that make sense? She huffed. Right now you think you have to mine the ore to smelt the iron to make the sword alone. And this metaphor is getting out of hand and I hate it. Evelyn sat there, fuming quietly at her own assumed ineloquence, as I sniffed and nodded and wiped the threat of tears from my eyes. I couldn't help but feel Maisie's cryptic meaning was more literal than this. Maisie was out there, she thought like an abyssal thing, gather your friends was an instruction from lips that spoke a different language. Evelyn's metaphor was practical, concrete, grounded in the here and now. She wasn't right but she also wasn't wrong. It's a good metaphor, I said past a lump in my throat. I like it. Thank you. Damn right, Rain said softly. Makes sense to me. Metaphor, Tenny trilled. Her tentacle tightened around my shin. The shaman knows what she is doing, wizard, though she knows it not, Jing purred. But your loyalty is real. Evelyn cleared her throat and didn't seem to know what to say. Good girl, Preem intoned, which saved Evelyn from her embarrassment by giving her a target for a thunderous frown. I still don't know where to start though, I admitted. I was going to rewire my senses again, but I don't know how that would help in the long run. Better control of hyperdimensional mathematics, yes, but I'm still an ant trying to fight an elephant. How do I combat the eye? Know your enemy, Evelyn said. And maybe stop thinking of it as a fight. Neither you nor I are particularly good at fighting, are we? You've spent too much time absorbing Rain's attitude, everything is to be punched or shot at. Not everything, Rain muttered. I managed a weak laugh. Play to your strengths instead. We have a technical problem, Evelyn continued, ignoring her. We need to do research about the eye. With access to Carcosa, perhaps that's possible in a way it never was before. There's bound to be others who've been to Wonderland, other accounts than from a single mad medieval monk. Perhaps Wonderland was something else, somewhere else, before the eye happened to it. Besides, if I can make a working Invisus Oculus with the books I hope to acquire from Carcosa, we can go to Wonderland ourselves. We can look our opponent in the eye, she cleared her throat. You know what I mean. But then it'll know me, I said. As soon as I try to save Maisie. 7 Shades was right, she dash. Heather, Evelyn almost snapped at me. This isn't a Hollywood action movie. We're not going to do a daring dramatic raid with no intel. Oh. Good bloody point, went Rain. Once we've figured out how to make an opening, then yes, you may have to figure out what to do with it. But there's a whole shattered dimension, a ruined world below the eye, followers in the rubble. There's bound to be ways to understand it. We can't do hyperdimensional mathematics for you, but we can help you figure out how to apply it when you do. We can experiment in controlled conditions, here, with me. And I'm certain Lauren has something to contribute there, when you're less tired. Lozzie made a scrunched up face. Maybe. Yes, that's all a very good point, I said. I feel a bit silly. Evelyn smiled at me, rueful and pained, but very real. You're a good leader, Heather, but you're a poor strategist. My mother would have run rings around you. Allow me to help with that. She sighed. When I've taken my painkillers and gotten up on the right side of bed, I like to think I'm not bad at that. She can be, Rain said approvingly. Shoulda seen our Evie back when she was suddenly head of the family, if you know what I mean. Yes, of course, I said, nodding with a twinge of guilt. What can we do about her though? Evelyn narrowed her eyes at me. Deep in there I saw a dark twinkle. Control the variable. But how? Heather, she sighed. I am so very tired of being afraid all the time. My methods have availed us nothing. Let's try yours. My methods? Evelyn raised her eyes to the ceiling, as if looking to the heavens. We know you're watching us, she said out loud. Come out and talk. Oh. I lit up, glanced down at the yellow fabric still in my hand, and then looked around the room too. Yes, yes. 7, are you there? Here. Now. Rain asked, going tense. In the kitchen. Why not? Evelyn grumbled. Everything else important in my life happens in this house lately. Lozzie disentangled herself from me at last and sprang to her feet with excitement. Come out, come out. Come say hi. Hi. Tenny let out a long, warbling, fluttery sound of shared excitement. I know you're watching us, I said to the yellow scrap in my hand. I know you're watching us. I want to talk to you again. A truce this time. Please. Show yourself, Evelyn was saying. Rain was laughing, looking like she wanted to draw a knife. Jing did not join in, but Lozzie waved her arms and twirled on the spot and raised her voice. Amid the noise and confusion and appeals to an outsider godling, I whispered under my breath, to the scrap of yellow cloth in my hand. I need to be like you. I know you're watching me, I said to my reflection. My face stared back at me from inside the bathroom mirror. I waited for a change, for a smile I did not make, for the twitch of an eyebrow or a lash, or a silent question behind my own eyes. I watched my peripheral vision for a haze of aspirated bile, for a wind-stirred flurry of dead leaves, for scorching sunlight on new bones. A full minute passed, I counted the seconds in my head, or at least made an attempt to do so, as my heart hammered inside the thin cage of my ribs and my mouth went dry and the stiff bruises throbbed in my sides and hips. I waited for a reply, in the bright cold of the bathroom in the middle of the night with all the lights on. No reply came. Same as every other attempt we'd made over the last day and a half. I let out an explosive sigh. I'm alone, I puffed out a failed insult. It took me a lot of courage to do this, don't you respect that at all? My reflection stayed very much just me, plus a scowl. Fine, I said. Have it your way. Maybe you require more dignified surroundings than this old bathroom? Well, tough. You should have answered us when we were making a big fuss of you. Now you're just being obstinate. I am not traipsing all the way downstairs in the dark to light candles and make offerings, you high-maintenance old cow. Not a whisper. Or maybe you're not watching at all. Or maybe you don't care, and this is all a mad waste of time and I'm just talking to myself. Cursing myself for a fool, I ran the cold tap in the sink for a moment, letting the water swirl down the drain. I slurped a mouthful from my own cupped hand, and when I straightened up again, my reflection straight with me. To be fair to her, this bathroom was indeed not an appropriate venue for respectful supplication, but we'd left respect and humility behind hours ago. The clawfoot tub with the dust underneath, the peeling paint on the walls, the scuffed skirting board and the cracked tiles, at least the sink and toilet were clean, but this was still no place for a negotiation. I glanced over my shoulder at the bathroom door, sensibly shut, the upstairs hallway and the night held beyond. I'd made certain I was not followed, that no eavesdropper would interrupt this. If Rain woke alone, she'd be calling for me. If Preem noticed anything amiss, she'd knock. Evelyn, well, Evie would probably approve of this unilateral plan. Maybe. I hoped. A shadow of guilt passed across my heart, but this was the only way. We had to get back to Carcosa, the sooner the better. I turned back to the mirror. It's just me now, I continued. Come out, and talk to me like you did before. You and I, we need to make a truce. Though, I suppose we're not at war. I didn't practice this part. An agreement then, we need to make an agreement. Nothing. Please, Sevens. Can I call you that? Sevens. 7 shades of sunlight is a bit of a mouthful. Please. Only the creak of the house and the distant whisper of wind down Sherrowford streets. All right then. Either you can talk to me now or if you interrupt us in Carcosa, I will attack you. If you start the next act of your play, or you try to take anybody away, I will stop it, I will run on stage, I will pry the actors off each other, I don't care. If you interrupt us in a dangerous place, I will come at you with everything I have. My expression frowned back at me from the mirror. And I don't want to have to do that, but that's the only choice I can make to protect my friends with what we have to do. In one hand I twisted the scrap of yellow cloth torn from her raiment. Please talk to me. I don't want to fight you, I hissed at my reflection. I want to be like you. Talking to myself in the mirror was no magical technique, but simply a psychological trick. I could have done this in the kitchen or the workshop, but seeing my own face was supposed to make this feel less absurd. 7 Shades had warned me for a few minutes and told me unwelcome truths in my own voice, so the point was to imagine it was her in the mirror. The technique was backfiring. I felt like a crazy person. So normal, for me. We'd been trying to contact 7 Shades of Sunlight for the last 36 hours, and this attempt was not only going no better than all the others, it also made me feel very silly. She had declined to appear to us in the kitchen, not enticed by Evelyn's huffing entreaties and Lozzie's genuine excitement to make a new friend. She had not risen to Zheng's growled offer of a physical duel which I had vetoed anyway. She had left unanswered our formal requests later that day and this morning, spurned Evelyn's arcane welcome mat, ignored our humble abode. Evelyn had broken out certain magic circles which she described as rolling out the red carpet. Most circles I've built are for containment or repulsion, or for some kind of specific examination, she'd grumbled at the chalked mess which filled half the workshop floor space. But this? This thing is the equivalent of a 5-star hotel room with a mirrored ceiling and a mini-fridge full of booze. And she still turns her nose up at it. Maybe she's the rustic type, Rain had joked. Prefers ABB. With a level of passive-aggressive grumbling impressive even for her, Evelyn had turned to Kimberly's particular area of expertise, when the poor woman had arrived home from work earlier today. But Wicca isn't Kimberly had stammered. I mean, religion shouldn't apply to dash. Mechanically, no, but for the purposes of appealing to the sensibilities of a creature like this, it does apply. Evelyn had sounded like she'd bitten into a rotten peach. Just give me something to work with, something that doesn't involve bathing in bull's blood under the full moon, all right? I could steal a goat, wizard, Zheng had purred. I am not putting down a tarp so we can slit an animal's throat in here. No. Simplify. At Kimberly's suggestion we'd added rings of candles, turned the lights down low, and made an offering of food, thankfully. We didn't have to ask Zheng to poach livestock from the Sherrowford countryside, because the general consensus said a real sacrifice should be something we all valued, something we'd rather not give up. So we'd offered 7 Shades of Sunlight the most expensive curry. We could order something called a Kerala prawn caldine, from a curry house near the city center with the wonderful name of Gulbaden's gunpowder and a full bottle of vodka. Not Tesco value, either. Proper Polish import, Rain had called it. None of that French nonsense made from old shoes. 7 Shades had not the slightest interest in any of that. We'd all felt extraordinarily silly, standing there in the dark at a respectful distance from a rapidly cooling takeaway curry which had cost over 30 quid. After 15 minutes of shuffling and coughing, we'd given up, and Rain had begun sampling both curry and vodka. She pronounced both very good. Absolute goddamn waste of time, Evelyn had cursed, exhausted by the inherent absurdity of trying to attract the attention of an outsider godling daughter with a penchant for lesbian drama. Give me a spoon of that, Rain. Better be worth it. Maybe she's ghosted us, Rain said around a mouthful of rice. Lost interest. I scared her off, I sighed. It's my fault. That's a good thing, though, said Rain. Right? I shrugged. No, it wasn't, but I couldn't say that part out loud, not yet. Evelyn made a face around her sample spoonful of curry. Too spicy. Weak, wizard, Zheng purred. And no, it's not a good thing, Evelyn carried on. We don't know why this thing isn't responding. She could have decided to simply wait for her opening. We take no unnecessary chances. We'll try again in the morning, oh, sod it, I don't know. I'm out of ideas. At least the full-on spooky occult offering routine was less loud than Lozzie's plan of running from room to room trying to catch 7 shades in hiding. What if we put on a play of our own? Rain suggested, after downing a half shot of vodka and smacking her lips. We could do, I dunno, Animal Farm. Zheng can be boxer. Rain, I sighed. An Animal Farm is a novel. Evie, please, I'd groaned, blushing. Zheng grunted. In approval or not, I couldn't tell. Rain pulled a face. No, I'm serious, Evelyn said, anything but serious. She gestured between Rain and Zheng and I, go on. Get in a pile, make out a bit, see if it works. Try sticking your tongue down Zheng's throat perhaps. Not a good idea. No. Thought not. She cast me an exasperated glance. I've had enough, I'm going to bed. If you come up with anything, wake me. Or don't. I chose the latter. Slipping out of bed in the middle of the night had not been easy. The first night after our confrontation with 7 shades in the medieval metaphysics room, I was worn down to a stub, had embraced unconsciousness long before Rain had guided me into bed. My bruises had woken me in the dim small hours of the early morning, a familiar stiffness in my flanks which blossomed into a slow, creaking ache as I shifted beneath the bedsheets. The pain was deeper this time, rooted in the tissue structures inside my torso where I'd anchored my tentacles. I'd found myself wrapped in Rain's embrace, her legs tucked between mine. Somehow she'd carefully avoided putting pressure on my bruised flanks, even while asleep. The idea had come to me as I'd lain in the dark on the edge of consciousness, dreaming of abyssal grace and Maisie's voice. But even if I'd had the willpower to pry myself out of bed and expose my bruises to the cold beyond Rain's cuddle, I wouldn't have been able to fully suppress the pain, and my fumbling would probably have woken her up. And I had to do this alone, that was the whole point. So I'd endured a full day of failed experiments in calling up outside's most prolific lesbian playwright. Then, snuggled up in bed the night after the curry offering, once Rain's breathing had grown soft and regular, I'd clawed my way back from the edge of sleep. Extracting myself from her embrace with my side stiff with bruises took 15 minutes of stop-start wriggling until I was free. Secrets in the night. At least this time I wasn't self-harming. Before I'd worked up the courage to put my plan into action, I'd stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at my body. I was wearing lilac pajama bottoms and a pair of long-sleeved dark t-shirts borrowed from Rain, a size too big for me and very warm. I'd lifted the shirts up and examined my bruises in the mirror, turned on the spot to watch the way my muscles bunched, ran a hand over the purple and black blotches in my flanks. Zheng was right, in a way, the bruises were beautiful. They were proof I was in this body, that it's mine, that I was here. Was that enough? To be here, in this? Weak and scrawny, but real. In the end, after my ultimatum and my pleading, the mirror yielded nothing. 7 shades of sunlight was not going to respond. I sighed at my reflection, shaking my head and planning a sad retreat back to bed. Perhaps Evelyn was correct, perhaps if I snogged Zheng and then Rain together, how would that even work, I wondered. What were the physical logistics? Then perhaps 7 shades would deign to descend from her authorial throne to correct our technique. This is all so silly. I tooted, and looked down at the scrap of yellow in my hands. What was I expecting, a talking mirror? You are such an idiot, Heather. Not an entirely unreasonable assumption, considering the sorts of things that happen in your life these days, the mirror said. Damn her, I did jump. I flinched like she'd crawled out of the sink plug hole. In the mirror, my face was tilted to one side, with a pained expression of preemptive apology. The sink, our toothbrushes, the bathtub, all of it was the same as in reality, even the pajamas on my body. All except the expression on my face. It's you, I said. She's 7 shades of sunlight wearing my face on the other side of a reflection side and nodded with a sad sort of smile, in the exact same way I might do if confronted by one of my friends indulging in a bit of thoughtless emotional self-harm. Yes, Heather. Despite everything, she said gently. It's still you. So you are willing to talk. For a certain definition of talk, she said with my voice, wincing in slow motion. I cannot make a deal or a truce, not in the way that you and your friends want me to. That's not what I am. That would be like asking rain to stay up, or wind to cease blowing. TCH, I tooted and rolled my eyes. I can't talk to the wind or the rain. You're not a natural force, you're a being. You can make decisions. I almost closed my eyes to rub the bridge of my nose in exasperation, but stopped myself at the last moment. If I wasn't looking at her, would she still exist? And why are you talking to me from inside the mirror? This was just my psychological crutch, I didn't expect you to really do it. I thought you'd appear behind me or something. 7 Shades smiled one of my smiles, nervous but passionate. It just seemed like a bit of fun, she admitted. Spooky mirrors, voices in the night, doppelgangers. Rain would call it all very Hammer horror, wouldn't she? I'm not a fan of random spooky things, I told her. Then you're in the wrong vocation. It's not a vocation. I didn't choose any of this. 7 Shades pulled a face that made me want to reach into the mirror and slap myself, a combination of half squint, slightly pursed lips, and a sideways tilt of the head. Superior skepticism. Did I ever give Evelyn or Rain a look like that? I looked utterly insufferable. You sort of did, Heather, she said. You could always have kept taking your pills, or did what the doctors told you and abandoned any thought of your sister, or chosen not to push for this confrontation with the great eye. You could still do that, you know. You could still take the step back. You could go wake Rain right now, and have a tearful conversation about how you don't think beating the eye is ever possible, how you're too afraid, you love her and your friends too much to risk them, so on and so on. And you know, deep down, that she'd accept it. She wouldn't even think less of you, not in the long run. She'd get to keep you, alive and in one piece and not slipping off into the abyss. How is any of that a choice? I asked before I could stop myself, then winced and held up my free hand. Wait, no, don't answer that. You're distracting me with developmental personal philosophy. This is what you do. Don't say a word. 7 Shades leaned forward, as if trying to see her own feet in the mirror. Her eyebrows climbed my forehead. Oh. Oh. Oh, as in, oh, why? She pulled a pained grimace and nodded down, at my other hand. Is that a piece of me you have there? I held up the scrap of yellow fabric from her robes. Yes. Rain cut it off you, I don't know if I should apologize for that or something. It is a bit like collecting my toenail clippings. She cleared her throat softly. That is a bit weird, Heather. Look, forget that for now. Will you talk to me about making a deal? I asked. Only if you promise not to threaten to unravel me again, she said with a hint of tooting schoolmarm. I was quite shocked when you blossomed. I do not make faces like that, I said. I'm sorry. Oh, she laughed a nervous little laugh. Oh, Heather, but you do. I cannot go beyond your boundaries while I wear your role. I resisted the urge to prove her right, and instead counted to 5 inside my head before I spoke again. Very well, I promise not to threaten to unravel you again, but this goes both ways. This is why I'm alone, this is why I didn't want you to turn up with everyone else around. You can visit whatever horrors you want upon my mind, as long as you keep your hands off my friends. Away from Rain. Away from all of them. I understand. She nodded, very understanding indeed, very empathetic. Very me. And obviously lying. She'd only said "I understand," not promised to do what I asked. Did I manipulate others like that? Could I have actually hurt you, before, with my tentacles? I asked. She pulled my thinking face. Perhaps. I sighed. Probably not. Perhaps her rapid retreat yesterday morning was just as scripted as everything else. Maybe even this conversation was all an act. Will you come out of the mirror, then? I asked. She froze, a doubtful frown betrayed in the turning down of her mouth. I think you may have made a tactical mistake there, Heather. I'm sorry. Why do you need me to come out of the mirror if you're not going to try to hurt me? We can talk like this, can't we? Remember, I'm in your role right now. I'm as cautious, some might say paranoid, she winced, as you are. My fingers tightened around the scrap of yellow cloth and my throat tightened around unsaid words. I wanted to see you. Again. Physically. You know all my fears, don't you? You must understand why. Seven Shades did a miniature sigh of politely suppressed irritation. I'm not omniscient. I'm not actually a god. Oh, all right, fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. I steeled myself and took a deep breath. You were beautiful. When I switched to abyssal senses, and I saw what you actually are, you were beautiful. I want to see that again. Seven Shades of Sunlight, puppeteering my body on the other side of the bathroom mirror, blushed red as a tomato. The effect was deeply grotesque. I looked like a chinchilla in some kind of mating frenzy. Ugh, I made an involuntary noise. Is that me? Well, she struggled and stammered, couldn't look me in the eye, didn't know what to do with her hands, flapping them about. That's not how this is supposed to turn out at all. Oh, it's the observer problem all over again. I have changed too much and dash. Stop blushing, I snapped, outraged and horrified, blushing right back at her. You don't feel embarrassment, you're just simulating mine. Oh my goodness, don't. It's not simulation. It's you. TCH, fine. Seven Shades rolled her eyes and huffed, a perfect impression of me in a fit of pique, and then climbed out of the mirror. Despite explicitly asking for that exact thing, the sight of one's own reflection climbing through a mirror like an open window was not a phenomenon for which the human brain is remotely prepared. For a moment I felt like sitting down all of a sudden as my head swam. The mirror me on the other side mounted the sink with unsteady feet and uncertain hands and a rather worried look on her face, then stuck her head and shoulders through, grasped the edge of the mirror like the lip of a window, and slowly clambered down on this side, into the real bathroom, reaching for the floor with desperate toes. When she was down, her hands shook with nerves, just as mine would have if I'd tried to scale the bathroom fixtures. Oh, that is incredibly weird, I said, wide-eyed. It's, not as easy as I assumed. Seven Shades shot the mirror a disapproving look and wiped sweaty palms on her copied pajama bottoms. Maisie would have loved this, I thought, like something out of a fairy tale. And why did I think of Maisie at that moment, alone with an outsider in the middle of the night? Because it was like standing next to her again, if only I willfully ignored everything else about the situation. I don't mean the mirror, I said with a shuddering sigh. You're not really me, you're not really in that body. If you'd fallen it wouldn't have hurt you. I mean how you're all me, this time. Seven Shades of Sunlight blinked at me with my own face, innocent and lost. I'm sorry. Yesterday morning in the medieval metaphysics room, Seven Shades of Sunlight had manifested my head on a body of rippling sulfuric ocean, but now she imitated me from crown to heel, pajamas and skinny ribs and flat chest and all. She had my permanent eye bags, my indrawn shoulders, even the slight inward tilt of my feet in my 2 layers of socks. A true reflection stood before me. The only thing missing was the scrap of torn yellow fabric in my hand, the piece of her real body. A faint yellow miasma haloed her form, an after-image of flowing robes rippling in unseen wind, as if over my copied pajamas she wore a memory of her real self, so translucent it was almost invisible, a ghost washed away by the bright light reflected off the bathroom walls. But unless I focused, her yellow mantle remained beyond sight. You know exactly what I mean. I tried to make it harsh, but couldn't quite get there. This really was like talking to Maisie, and that hurt. Except for one difference, a dark and pessimistic part of myself whispered. Maisie almost certainly does not look this human anymore. Oh, yes, well. 7 Shades cleared her throat awkwardly. I have been exploring your role in more detail. Not something I've done in a long time. You are a most fascinating person, Heather Morel. She gave me an awkward smile, the kind I must have given Rain when we'd first met. If you impersonate me in front of my friends, I told her. In front of Rain, if you use my face to do anything, I'll dash. My place is not to interfere. 7 Shades held up both hands in surrender, as if I had been about to attack her. Really? Really? I have no interest in that. There's no need to be jealous, I am not going to steal your girlfriend, I can promise that. Well, quite. See that you don't. She sighed. The fact you would worry about such a thing in the first place is proof you still don't understand what it is I do. I waited a heartbeat to see if she would continue. When she didn't, I sighed. And this is where I'm supposed to ask, and what is it that you do? She smiled one of my smiles, fluttering and nervous. Yes, oh, yes, well done. You do have a sense for dramatic flair, Heather, especially when you're cornered. She looked down at herself at myself, her wearing a mirror of my body. It's been over 7 decades since I stepped so fully into a role, since I had to feel out every possibility. You are a most tangled web. Is that meant to be a compliment? I asked. It doesn't feel like one. She winced with mortified embarrassment. Oh, no, I didn't mean, dash. Never mind, it's okay, wait, no, it's not okay. I tooted, groping for a conversational handhold. I felt as if she kept yanking my feet out from under me, so I flipped the script. Who was the last person you stepped into? What happened to them? 7 Shades blinked at me several times, and then her face lit up with the kind of warm smile I usually reserved for talking about my favorite books. You really want to know? She asked, in hushed tones of excited reverence. Oh wow, I thought, I can finally see why Rain likes that part of me. I almost blushed. Did I really look like that when talking about my passions? Yes. I wouldn't ask if I didn't want to know. A soldier, she said, then paused for effect and bit her bottom lip. A soldier. Yes. She was no older than you, in fact. She was a member of a crew team for I suppose a sort of gun, yes. 7 Shades flapped her hands. On the outskirts of a great city. The city was about to be squeezed between the jaws of an equally great mechanical host. Many young men had died, too many men for the city to bear, so young women were called up to serve instead, filling their roles behind the lines of battle, and sometimes further forward. They were losing. Her culture, her people, all of it was being extinguished in fire and blood. In the darkness in some stinking billet, she reached out for comfort, and found a friend. And me. At first, as she began to speak, I assumed that 7 Shades of Sunlight was losing her grip on my role because I never spoke like that, with wistful nostalgia for a past glory, a magnum opus seen in retrospect. Then I realized I simply didn't have anything to feel that way about, the real me was too young. Perhaps I would sound like that one day. Eventually. If I didn't die first. The friend she found, oh, friend, what am I saying, they ended as lovers. She handed my girl a book, 7 Shades carried on. Not quite the King in Yellow, you understand, but something similar, another iteration. She came to Carcosa in her dreams, read books while artillery shells fell around her real self. She loved the woman next to her, but even in the face of certain death, neither of them could reach across the gap to join their hands. Seven Shades sighed, smiled, blissful in a way I never had cause to feel. It was beautiful, two tiny lives in the center of such vast geopolitical drama, cradled in a web of danger and starvation and bullet wounds. Are you talking about Earth? Our reality? Did this happen here? She demurred with an awkward smile. Maybe. I had to consciously harden my heart. She was so intensely joyous about her purpose, it felt infectious. So, I said. You made these two people's lives the subject of voyeuristic drama. That's what you do. Seven Shades sighed and tooted, exactly like I would if somebody had insulted the very concept of literature. But I brought them together, in a world that would have torn them apart. They both lived into their 80s, together, after the war was done. Their side won, though of course I didn't have a hand in that, she added that clause with an awkward ahem at the end. Is that outcome not worth a little voyeurism? Is love not worth intrusion? Maybe. I don't know. Imagine for a moment that I could guarantee you would get your sister back, that none of your friends would die in the attempt. She held up a hand, expression creased with apology. I can't make that guarantee, but imagine I could. Would you accept my voyeurism, then? Yes, I said, without hesitation, a lump in my throat. But what's your success rate? She winced. Ah. Define success. Do I really have to? She tilted her head up slightly, the hint of a laugh on her lips, a flash of good-natured superiority in her eyes. I felt sick. Was this an expression I made? It looked awful. Then I realized, she was about to quote. I did do that, I did look like that, and I looked like an infuriating little goblin. Do not give your attention to what others do or fail to do, give it to what you do, or fail to do, she recited. I sighed heavily. So your track record is bad. Your interference mostly results in failures. She did this look off to the side huff and I felt like slapping her. No longer a vision of standing next to Maisie, this really was like standing next to me, and I was awful. Can't you be somebody else while I talk to you? I asked. I feel so ugly. You're not, she tooted. Oh, Heather, you don't like yourself very much, and that's so unfair. You refuse to use what you've got. We're getting off track again, you're doing it again, I said. You're the one who asked me the questions, Heather. All right, let's not, deep breaths, count down to 0. Let's not lose focus. Let's make a deal. You want us to win against the eye, yes? That's correct. She nodded. I also want you to get with both of your beloved, but I know that's hard, and dash. Let's not, I repeated. She closed her mouth, and set her face in a polite listening pose. We need to go back to Carcosa to get the books Evelyn needs, I explained. And we need you not to interrupt us. It's already dangerous enough out there without you deciding it's time for street improv. Come to think of it, why did you try to take Evelyn away, out there? That was all for you. She pulled a pained expression. I frowned at her. Well, you did manage to remind me how much I value her, and I don't need to be reminded of that again. If you try to take her away in Carcosa again, I'll kill you. Seven Shades pulled an "oh dear" face. Not how I would have reacted to being threatened with lethal force, but the kind of face I might make if rain threatened to tickle me. We need your assurance you won't interrupt us again, not out there, I finished. But what if the right conditions present themselves? This is like asking you not to feel curiosity when you see an unread book with a fascinating title. If it was to achieve a higher aim to rescue Maisie, I could resist any urge, I told her. You should understand that, playing my role. I already am. Seven Shades sighed with indulgent compassion, the sort of noise I might make in the face of Evelyn trying to justify hurting herself. Heather, you are such an idiot. You have it upside down, she told me with stinging kindness. You don't want to go back to the abyss at all. Oh, puppets, we are getting rather off theme here, aren't we? A third voice asked, from right behind me. I almost jumped out of my skin. Phantom tentacles twitched in defense reaction, and real muscles attempted to compensate for limbs I didn't have, drawing deep throbs of pain from within my bruised flanks and up the inside of my spine. I wheezed and doubled up. Vision blurring, staggering to turn around to see Saldis. Of course. The mage from Carcosa was sat on the edge of the bathtub, noble chin resting in one hand, legs crossed under the skirts of her exquisite red and gold robes, wearing the most bored expression I had ever seen on a human face. What dash, I wheezed, trying to straighten past the sudden pain. Don't get me wrong, sweets, I'm all for collaborative work, Saldis said. But isn't this part obvious by now? She pulled a sour face. Haven't you looked at yourself in the mirror recently? Sal dash, I managed, hands wrapped around my sides, trying alternately to press my bruises and not touch them. Again. Oh, I'm always watching, sweet. Saldis winked at me. You are not supposed to be back here, said Seven Shades of Sunlight, in the same tone I'd used to threaten Saldis back in the library of Carcosa. Goodness, did I really sound like that? Ice and steel, from a miniature poodle. Saldis' perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. Oh. Ah. You have become aware of me. You have neither paid for a ticket, nor joined the audience through the public entrance, Seven Shades said. Who are you, magician? Or should I say thief? Saldis stood up very quickly, brushing her long skirt smooth over her hips and doing a very good impression of somebody who was just leaving anyway. No need to bother escorting her out, forget she's even here, don't want to cause a scene. I asked you a sensible question, magician, Seven Shades pressed. Who are you? Saldis spread her hands. A mischievous smile played at the corners of her lips. Oh, I'm not really here, she said. And then she wasn't. I hate it when I finally got my breath back as the throbbing pain receded. Hate it when she does that. TCH, gatecrashers, Seven Shades said, in the same tone I reserved for the words, modern suburban architecture. Can I gatecrash too? Came a whisper from stage left. That voice didn't make me jump, it filled me with ice. Seven Shades of Sunlight reacted the same, a mirror of me. We both stared at the bathroom door with wide eyes like a pair of deer caught in the headlamps of an oncoming train. We'd been too busy with Saldis' unwelcome intrusion to notice. A certain light tread had crept along the upstairs hallway, little dexterous hands had eased the bathroom door handle down millimeter by millimeter, and a perceptive observer had peeked in through the slender gap. A heavy-lidded blue eye floated in the slice of dark hallway beyond the bathroom. Oh, Lozzie, I breathed. Lozzie did not wait for an invitation. She opened the door wider and tiptoed over the threshold with all the skittish caution of a young cat investigating new territory. She slid the door shut behind her with a soft click, watching Seven Shades of Sunlight with slow sleepy-eyed curiosity. She was dressed in a borrowed t-shirt several times too large for her, and a pair of shorts, her bare legs goose-pimpled against the nocturnal cold. Wow, Lozzie whispered, eyes glued to Seven Shades of Sunlight. There's two of you. You are never gate-crashing, little one, Seven Shades told her, with all the same affection I used for Lozzie. You go wherever you will. Though you did surprise me. Lozzie did this side-to-side head bob, as if trying to examine Seven Shades from different angles, then crept across the bathroom toward me. Lozzie, I'm sorry, I murmured. I know I shouldn't be doing this alone, I needed to dash. Shoo, fine, Lozzie murmured back, without taking her eyes off my perfect imitation. How did she sneak up on you, anyway? I hissed to Seven Shades. Because she's one of us. Lozzie came up to my side and linked her arm through mine, cuddling close. She ran her eyes up and down Seven Shades of Sunlight, with a kind of performative tight-lipped skepticism. Then she reached out, and before either of us could stop her, she pinched Seven Shades' cheek. Take this off, silly, Lozzie said. I can see you under there. You're pretty without makeup. 7 Shades of Sunlight used my face to blush bright red, which drew a giggle from Lozzie. Don't encourage her. I tooted. Me or her? Lozzie giggled at me instead. Us or we? Are you even the real Heather? She closed one eye and then the other, peering at me alternately. I think so. I sighed. Lozzie giggled again, bouncing on the balls of her bare feet. Lozzie, we were I tried, stumbled. I was trying to negotiate a dash. I heard. Lozzie chirped, then fixed 7 Shades with the most purse-lipped, squinty face of suspicion that she was capable of pulling, which was a bit like a hamster trying to imitate a bulldog. And for the record, from me, which is the only record that matters, Heather is not an idiot. She is, 7 Shades said gently. Oh dear, I cleared my throat. You heard that part then, Lozzie? You want to go swimming again? Next time, I'll come too. No she doesn't, 7 Shades said with a sigh. Heather, you dash. Yes, exactly, I said. I don't want to return to the abyss. They both blinked at me, blindsided. Lozzie looked like a startled bird, and 7 Shades adopted a polite sort of blankness to conceal her lack of comprehension. I cleared my throat. What I actually want is to not want to return there, I explained. I want to be comfortable here, in this. I gestured down at my own body, scrawny, weak, inadequate as it was. I've tried to change myself, to add things, and it's slow. It hurts. It barely works. But when I looked at you, when I saw you through abyssal eyes, you were beautiful. Abyssal life, but here and I want to be I sniffed hard, pulled myself together before I fell apart completely. You're both. You get to be both at once. I want to be like you. You already are, 7 Shades said. I blinked at her. What? Lozzie squeezed my hand. Oh, Heather, 7 Shades tooted. You're missing the wood for the trees. You focus on things that do not define what you are. You are no less you, no less what you are meant to be, because of the lack of tentacles to wave around. It doesn't feel that way, I said, sagging into Lozzie's support. If only I could be better, faster, I don't know. Just because you cannot climb up the inside of a stairwell by grasping the handrails with tentacles doesn't make you any less what you already are. Nothing will change that. Not perception, not pain, not dysphoria. The last one, you must find coping methods, of course, but coping is different from being, and in being, you will find peace and power in equal measure. She's right about that bit, Lozzie whispered to me, as if we were conspiring beyond 7 Shades hearing. But not that you're an idiot. She stuck her tongue out at 7 Shades. The tentacles help. That's why I do it, I said. I don't risk ripping myself apart for fun. Having flawed flesh is better than having no flesh at all, she said. So what? I felt tears prickle in my eyes. You telling me to be happy with what I've got? I'm telling you to look at yourself. I am, remember. I gestured at her mirror image of me. Alright, fine, forget it, we still need to make a proper deal about going back to Carcosa. And this is exactly why you need to sit still and watch the play, 7 Shades said. But very well, now I will hold up a mirror for you. And as she spoke, she aged. Watching a mirror image of myself gain 15 years in a heartbeat was not what I'd expected to witness tonight, and I had been prepared for anything, or so I thought. Gray hairs silvered among the mousy brown, lines deepened around my reflected eyes and mouth, flesh sagged and skin roughened. 7 Shades of Heather hunched, clutching herself about the shoulders, shuddering and shaking, a thin string of drool looping from her slack lips. 1,000-yard stare clouded her unfocused eyes. A version of me, wrecked on the rocks. You dash, she slurred in my voice, blurred by pain and madness. Want to end up like this? I sighed with exasperation. I've seen worse. I've been worse. Is this supposed to distress me? You're going to have to try harder than that. Yeah. Lozzie chorused with me. Stupid. That's stupid. Seven Shades as me nodded, twitching and flinching. This is not your way. See correct. My denial changed her again. Seven Shades straightened up. The wreckage reformed, older than me but not as old as the silly vision she'd first showed. She lost my habitual protective hunch. She crossed her arms over her chest, lifted her chin with an arch superiority, and her eyes grew somehow cold inside. No smile, not a hint, a closed expression. Nothing like me. Well? She asked in my voice, cynical and distant. For a moment I assumed I was looking at her, the real seven shades of sunlight, the soul inside the mirrored flesh. But then Lozzie said, Heather won't be like that. Stop it. She might, Lauren, Seven Shades said, precise and contemptuous, and I shivered. It's not impossible. She will go this far, if she wraps herself in frustrated ambition and brutal calculation. If she continues to ignore what she is. That's me, 10 years from now. I asked. It was no more credible than the shaking wreck, but it was so much worse. She made me look how I imagined Evelyn's mother must have looked. A cold maggoty inhuman thing wrapped in an artificial shell of plastic self-control, the truth showing through behind the eyes like parasitic worms. Is this who you wish to become? She asked me. I shook my head, going numb. No. No, never, no dash. Then observe the mirror. She changed a third time, into truth and beauty, which is the same thing by two different names. Flesh of peach leather and dove down and void dark, sleek and smooth and sharp. Muscles like oil and butter, tight and trimmed for grace and speed. 6 tentacles, elegant and precise, weaving rainbow strobe patterns in warm water. Clean sharp spines and a mouth of razor teeth and poison threat in every cell membrane. My eyes, in my euphoric face. Homo abyssus. And with a blink it was all gone, and 7 shades of sunlight mirrored the real me again. I felt tears running down my cheeks. Woo-woo, went Lozzie. Goals. That was beautiful, I breathed, voice shaking. It is what I see when I look at you, 7 Shades told me. I shook my head. It's a lie. I don't feel like that. How can I? Look at yourself, she said, and nodded at my body. And I knew what she meant. I shook my head. Do it. Lozzie chirped. I'll catch you. And no, I can't, I'll have another seizure. Lozzie, that is such a bad idea, know. If you look at yourself, Heather, 7 Shades said. If you look down at your own flesh with your true senses, then I will agree to your deal. While you and yours visit my father's library, I will distract myself, she sighed delicately. If you look. I should sit down for this, I said, lips numb. Lozzie, cradle my head, don't let me hit myself. I got it, she chirped. I sat down awkwardly, legs shaking. Lozzie got behind me and held me in a hug, my head nestled against her shoulder. For a moment I couldn't bring myself to move, too numb, scared of what I might see. Then, I looked down. Oh, there you are, puppets. I was beginning to wonder when you'd work up the courage to get back here. I'll be with you in a moment, just let me finish up this bicep, I have the contours almost perfect and I don't want to lose my vigor. Vitality. Saldis frowned as she worked through this linguistic enigma, then give up with a sigh and a tut and a shake of her thickly braided hair. Virtue, Preem suggested. A billion books in unnumbered shelves soaked up the golden bell of Preem's voice, beyond the rectangular clearing in the library of Carcosa. Saldis laughed. She tried to click her fingers and point at Preem, but the wet grey goo clinging to her hands precluded a satisfying snap of thumb and forefinger. She settled for a playful wave instead. "That is exactly what I am aiming to lose, you wonderfully dressed construct, you," she said to Preem. "Well, if I had any virtue left in the first place. I lost that a long time ago, trust me. That experience was a lot less delicious than this three-course meal will be, once it's all ready and baked and sizzling." Saldis snapped her perfect teeth together on the final word. Her tone made me vaguely uncomfortable, like she was perusing pornography in public. Evelyn did not hush Preem for speaking first, for abandoning the very explicit instructions of our plan, perhaps because our plan had survived all of about 5 seconds since stepping through the gateway. To Evelyn's credit, it was a very simple plan. She'd taken less than 15 minutes to explain all the possible outcomes, earlier that Saturday morning. She was to open the gateway to Carcosa, we were all to step through, and she was to do the talking. Evelyn's plan was to deliver a specific threat in a limited way, and use that credible threat to forge a brief understanding or at least, a mutual backing down between two mages. The rest of us were supposed to stand around and look threatening, with an eye to a very quick retreat back through the open gateway if anything went wrong. Preem was laden down with gear again, carrying not only the bag of expedition supplies and the metal nuts tied with twists of cloth, but a second sports bag of familiar appearance, heavily padded inside, which kept rustling and shifting beneath her shoulder. Rain stood bee-shielded and armed like a spiked turtle, while myself and Lozzie were tucked in neatly behind her, wrapped in coat and poncho and holding hands. Zheng lurked in the rear, a little grumpy after my reverse pep talk during which I had asked her not to just pull Saldis' head off, but also quietly satisfied that she was essential to my long-term safety. Twill was not present, because after 3 days of on and off, I'd run out of energy to argue with Evelyn. We'd stepped back through to Carcosa, a week after our first journey outside, in full awareness that Saldis might attack us. That's what the bone wand raised in Evelyn's hands was for, and the reason for the secret silent preparation in my own mind, which was threatening to give me a nosebleed. We'd been prepared for Saldis to be back in her grey sphere, or waiting with a mob of the squid-faced librarians, or transformed into a ogre. Or if we were exceptionally lucky just absent. We had not been prepared for her being obviously and openly turned on. Nor that she might return to her work after a glance and a smile and a wink at us. We were of sideline interest, compared to her objet d'art. And return to her work she did, skilled hands gliding smooth and wet over the curve and dimple of artificial flesh, humming to herself. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Rain, Evelyn, and I shared a glance, and I let go of the half-formed hyperdimensional equation on the edge of my consciousness, blinked past the shadow of a headache, and wiped a droplet of nosebleed on a tissue offered by Lozzie. Well, that hadn't been in the plan at all. In the clearing hedged by tall bookshelves where we'd stopped last time, Saldis' blocky grey sphere machine had put down roots, unfurled its leaves, and blossomed. The core sphere shape was still recognizable beneath the curling staircase stems and wide platforms like flat raincatcher leaves, dotted with smooth grey lumps and curves that were probably meant to act as furniture. Highlights of color had appeared amid the grey uniformity, a few piles of books undoubtedly sourced from the library shelves, some flimsy silken discarded clothing on a wide expanse of grey I took to be a bed, and a shocking trail of crimson bloody smear near the central stalk of the unfolded construct. The whole thing rose perhaps 10 feet into the air, like a miniature apartment without walls, rendered all in smooth grey, dropped into the middle of an outside dimension. A pile of half-melted grey blocks lay on the topmost exposed balcony, as if part of the machine had detached and died. Saldis herself was up there, stripped down to a gauzy scarlet undershirt with her sleeves rolled up. She was using the melted blocks like sculptor's clay, her hands and forearms caked in grey goo as she worked on her masterpiece. A half-finished human figure stood before her. She'd completed the feet and legs and abdomen and the side of a chest and one arm, all cast from smooth unblemished grey like flawless cement. Her sculpture was muscled like a Greek deity, lithe and athletic, detailed as any classical statue. Saldis glanced down at us, at Evelyn's question, and laughed a rosy laugh. Making a man, she said, then took a step back from her creation and tilted her head sideways. Or perhaps a woman, actually, I haven't entirely decided yet. She gestured at the statue's unfinished groin, smooth as a doll's and absent any detail. Of course I could always just go half and half and have both, but I think I'm in the mood for being split open like a pomegranate. Lozzie let out a snort giggle behind one hand, eyes going wide and seeking mine. Evelyn huffed a sigh. Rain laughed and went savage, nice, under her breath. I didn't get it. Well, actually, Saldis continued. Why does that have to be a man? Why, indeed? She asked the question of the air, with all the pretentious gloss of a self-defined artist. I finally understood the meaning and felt a blush in my cheeks. Rain cleared her throat from behind her homemade riot shield. You got so bored without us, you've been making a living dildo. Girl, you need some company. Dildo? Saldis frowned down at Rain. Oh, that's an awful word. Really? Dildo? Ugh. She pulled a stricken face. I do pity you little Englishers, this is not a pretty tongue. TCH, and now you've broken my concentration too. Oh well, not like he's going anywhere. She affectionately patted the statue's abdomen, which looked like it had been chiseled from the unrealized sexual yearnings of the terminally repressed. She turned away to descend the whirl of little staircases and platforms which led back to the core of the sphere. Deliver your threat, wizard, Jing purred softly. I know. Evelyn hissed over her shoulder. I was only distracted. Sown way of putting it, Rain murmured from the corner of her mouth, barely concealing her laughter. I was expecting a fight, not to find her making a sex doll. It is not a sex doll, Saldis said with a tut, as she finished winding her way down toward the floor and stepped out before us. I couldn't help but notice she didn't leave the boundaries of the unfolded sphere machine, her bare feet still in direct contact with an impossibly thin platform of gray material, like a little patio. Do we? Evelyn grunted. Sex doll. Lozzie squeaked, bright red in the face. If we hadn't been holding each other's arms, I think she would have fallen over in pure comedic delight. I wasn't blushing quite as hard, but this whole situation had rather left my resolve behind in the dust. I'd been asleep for ages. Saldis waved a hand at the sphere, too tame. I can hardly be expected to maintain myself in the total absence of a good rut. And you lot were taking your sweet time coming back as well. I was getting bored, especially after I got chased out of the cheap seats by 7 shades of sunlight. Saldis' eyes sought out my own and made contact with a half wince. Lady Morel, do tell me the truth, is the good director still very angry with me? I gathered myself, tried to stop thinking about handmade grey clay sex dolls, and shrugged. I wouldn't know, I said. We didn't talk about you, after you left. Oh. Saldis blinked at me, blank-faced. Oh. Well. Well then. Could you put in a good word for me, perhaps? That depends on what you do for us, I said. Sorry. Saldis sighed, then narrowed her gaze at me in a twitch of confusion, as if she'd seen a truth behind my eyes. Perhaps she had. After all, truth did lurk behind my eyes. Behind every inch of my flesh. I smiled at her curiosity. Heather, Evelyn hissed for my ears alone. That was not the plan. Plan's dead, Preem intoned. Now, correct me if I'm wrong about this, Rain said, smoothly distracting us all from an argument we could ill afford out here in the library, even with the doorway back to Sherrowford still open right behind us. But Saldis, woman like yourself could surely find an actual partner, right? No need for that thing. Rain nodded up at the half-finished statue. Saldis did this wave-like eyebrow wiggle of self-satisfaction at Rain's hooded compliment, the sort of expression I'd imagine usually accompanies statements about how much one is going to get laid that night. Well, if I could find anybody out here, Saldis replied. It's not as if these thralls can provide much company. Even if they were so inclined. Have you ever seen under their robes? No thank you. I'd rather bet a hound. Saldis pointed past us with a lazy hand, to where a few of the squid-faced librarians were going about their rounds, dragging their eyeless sight across the regimented book spines. Occasionally one would pause and feed a book into the mass of tentacles and spikes they used for faces, presumably to be routed to elsewhere in the library, and regurgitated from beneath the robes of another librarian. The gaggle of hangers-on we'd attracted last time were nowhere to be seen, perhaps returned to their duties, or simply driven off by Preem's timely physical violence. A few gritty gray bloodstains still marred the floorboards on the other side of the clearing. The few left here ignored us completely. The anthill paid us no heed. Evelyn cleared her throat, loud as she dared in this outside place. Everyone shut up. Saldis, listen to me. Yes. Saldis heard the confrontational tone and raised her eyebrows with all the unimpressed superiority of a very rich woman who considered herself not to be complained at. She also put her hands on her hips, hands covered in gray sculpting goo, which instantly ruined her red and gold skirt before she realized what she'd done. She looked down at herself and tooted, removing her hands and leaving smears of gray behind. Oh, bother. Will you pay attention? Evelyn hissed at her. Perhaps this place is not dangerous for you, but we're all on a timer and dash. Yes, 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 I'm listening. Saldis flapped a hand, trying to scrape the goo off her hips on a spur of her blossom sphere without making the stain any worse. Like a bear rubbing itself on a tree. Evelyn faltered, going tight around the jaw. Evie, just say the line, I whispered over her shoulder. I don't think it matters at this point, anyway. I think she's well. We can all see. And you're ready to get rid of her? Evelyn hissed back at me. I don't think it'll be necessary. But you're ready? Heather, promise me this time. I promise. Evelyn took a deep breath and raised her chin. Saldis. I want you out of Heather's head. We are carrying a commodenti with us, she gestured at the rustling bag under Preem's shoulder. And if I free it in here, I doubt even you could scourge every hiding place in this library before it grows enough to eat you. Saldis looked up from her hip wiggle cleaning. A what? Don't speak Roman at me, what is that supposed to dash? I have the corpse of a rabbit possessed by a demon, with a specific feeding deal, Evelyn snapped. It dash. Oh. Saldis lit up and almost clapped her goo-smeared hands together before catching herself, tooting, and waving them about ineffectually. Delightful. Yes, I'll play. And what is it you want, what is this about? Evelyn gave her a look like she'd just clogged the toilet. I want you out of Heather's head. I'm already out. Saldis tooted, outraged. 7 Shades of Sunlight has seen to that. I'm not going to do every little thing you tell me, Englisher, just because you threaten me with having to adopt a new pet, but I'm not going to cross a princess daughter of the Yellow King. You already did, I piped up. Evelyn shot me a look. Yes, well. Saldis shrugged. That was all out of love for her art, not defiance of a direct royal request. Like pirating a movie, Rain said. If that made any sense to Saldis at all, she ignored it. You know, miss, what was it again, say, she said to Evelyn. You shouldn't be so judgmental, you look like you could do with a bloody good spot of rumpy-pumpy as well and dash. Saldis stopped and pulled a face. What were those words? I will never like this language, that was awful. It wasn't even obscene in the fun way, just the stupid way. Rain was struggling not to laugh. Evelyn had blushed a confused red across her pale cheeks. Lozzie was grinning like we were at a real comedy play. Anyway, Saldis continued before Evelyn could recover her battered composure. Where's your Vargr? She was your shield before, and you can't get far before escape velocity as one of us without a shield, and I'm pretty certain she was also your dash. The werewolf is busy, Evelyn spat. Now answer my dash. I already have. I'm out, I dash. Then clear off out of our path, or submit to my dash. I've already offered to help, you pustulant little dash. While the mages traded puerile insults from a safe distance, sheltered respectively by arcane grey machinery or loyal loving constructs, I wove myself a tentacle. Imagination had been encouraged in me at a very young age. In Maisie too, when our mother had taught us to read and given us free run of the local library every Sunday afternoon. My young mind, as yet unafraid of wonderland and monstrous unnatural things, had learnt to weave from words the worlds I wanted to visit, from the rustic simplicity of the Shire to the mysterious surrealism of where the wild things are, through to the far too mature horrors of Watership Down. So when I visited Kimberly's bedroom every few days, to share visualization practice with her, I'd found it easy intellectually but hard emotionally. She'd made that spare bedroom into a cozy little space, colonized it with pastel bedsheets and her collection of questionably tasteful books on witchcraft, and even less tasteful little statuettes of rearing unicorns, along with all her other possessions rescued from the cramped flat in Gleeston Tower, except a few pieces of larger furniture which lay gathering dust in one of the less inhabitable upstairs rooms. Rain had helped out with a few trips back and forth in the car, and then Kim had stopped paying the rent on her old place. I think the whole setup was Evelyn's way of trying to help the poor woman, after what she'd been through, but nobody ever put it into words. The visualization process sometimes made me want to cry. I could weave in my mind's eye, right down to the connective tissues and epithelial layers, what a tentacle should look like, and yet know it was never really mine. Kimberly's skittish softness helped somewhat. I didn't want her to worry over my tears, so I always controlled myself as best I could. But now, standing outside, in the middle of a place so unnatural that it hurt us to stay here too long, I weaved a beautiful thing, and smiled. Dexterous point of tapered muscle, shaft of smooth pale dolphin flesh, core of flexible cartilage links like miniature locking pistons. Bioluminescence in the cell walls, set to strobe and pulse and throb in rainbow brilliance, or slink silent and slow in their own darkness. And where it met my skin, I built transition, not interruption. I hooked anchors deep into my flesh, wrapped them around my spine and hips, toughened the supports with tendons like steel cable and packed them around with brown fat and bone sheaths to cushion the strain. All in my head, of course. Just my imagination. Concentrating hard, I stretched out the tentacle toward Saldis. She was in the middle of throwing some huffing, tutaying comment back at Evelyn. I was half tempted to flick the mathematical switch, make the tentacle real, and tweak her elegant little nose. She might be able to see it though. And if I did make it real pneumosomatic flesh, Lozzie and Zheng and Preem would all see, and they'd be very unimpressed by the aftermath of aching and bruising and wheezing pain and terminal exhaustion, especially if I expended myself for a childish gesture. Actually, Lozzie would approve. But I still smiled, because I knew the tentacle was not merely a phantom limb at all. Heathy, Lozzie whispered. We should break it up before they fight, shouldn't we? No fighting, no fighting. I agreed, and let the thought tentacle drift apart. A single word keeps your guts in your belly, wizard, instead of between my teeth, Zheng was rumbling behind us. Scuttle back into your shell, lest I change my mind. Don't be silly, you dizzy old drogger. Saldis waved a hand at her. I'm still inside my walls. Test me if you want to feel the boiling oil, please. I'll repurpose you as well, I always need more fodder to break down, and there's lots of fodder clinging to your tired bones. I will not, Zheng purred back. Because I am under the shaman's grace, and she has asked me not to kill you. If I judge this is unwise, I will make my own choice. No, Zheng, I sighed and raised my voice a little, felt it creeping off into the depths of the library to be absorbed by the books. It's okay. Evie, let it go, you too, please. I think we've established what Saldis' priorities are. Sorry, I was thinking about other things. Quite right. Saldis said. With a tut. I will put in a good word for you, I told her before anyone could start again. With 7 shades. If you help us find the books we need. You mean it? Her eyebrows rose up her perfect high forehead. A wet tongue darted out to slick ruby-red lips. That's not just a pleasantry, is it? Lady Morel, I will be forever in your debt if you can get me back into the audience. Or, her eyes widened. Or win me a play of my own. You gotta have a big lesbian drama for that, I gather, Rain said. I can't make 7s do anything, I said. But I will ask her to allow you back into the, seats. If you hurt us, then I'll tell her the opposite. 7s. Saldis echoed, clapping her hands together for real this time, sending little droplets of grey clay splattering all over the front of her scarlet undershirt. You are on a first-name basis, with one of the pretenders. Oh, I could never lay a finger on such an august, no, never. You have nothing to fear from me. But please do tell her how much I wish to admire her work. I am a worthy audience, I am. Right. Yes. I nodded and cleared my throat, feeling a little awkward. There was no way I would have been comfortable with Saldis watching what had transpired in that bathroom, after she'd left. We probably didn't need to make an explicit deal with Saldis, she'd already offered to help find the books before. We likely didn't need to threaten her either, but I'd let Evelyn go ahead because I'd begun to suspect this was what mages needed. Formal deals, contracts, armed negotiation. Perhaps it was all the spellcasting and demon summoning that did it, or perhaps being a mage simply attracted a certain type of person. Perhaps this was why Kimberly was so bad at the emotional and manipulational side of being a mage. One had to be a bit of an arse first. Evelyn was an arse, though I loved her for it. I still don't trust you, Evelyn told her, then spoke sidelong to Preem. Watch her. One twitch out of place dash. Trust? Saldis said the word like it was an utterly preposterous notion. Trust has nothing to do with it, little Englisher. Respect everything. Think about it, Evie, Rain said with an amused grin. Flash stuff here dash. Flash stuff. Saldis echoed, then smiled slowly. Flash. Oh, I do like that. Flash. But how about fabulous? Oh yeah, now there's an English word worth hanging on to. Flash here thinks she's pissed off one of the gods, Rain carried on. And she's getting Heather to intercede. What does that make Heather? What does that make us? Evelyn let out a grumbling noise, not quite convinced, but did not dissent further. In the corner of my eye, I saw the fingertips of one of Preem's hands sneak over to the back of Evelyn's wrist, and make contact. Evelyn flinched and turned to frown, but Preem was staring at Saldis, betraying nothing inside. Gods, Saldis made a derisive noise. The Yellow Kings get are not gods, little hound. How dash Evelyn cleared her throat, recovering from Preem's unexpected touch. How would you define them then, How would you define the eye? I have met many creatures that claim to be gods, Saldis said. But never been face to face with Freya or Odin or even a stray giant, and certainly no demiurge. If the gods truly existed, Miss Say, do you believe they would allow obscenities such as us to wander the worlds unobstructed? None of us are obscenities, I said out loud. The conviction in my voice drew Saldis and Evelyn both to stare at me. Saldis narrowed her eyes again with that piercing cold intelligence. She clicked her fingers at last, an unsatisfying wet snap on her grey sculpting medium, and pointed a finger at me. Lady Morel. You know, you do seem different. I smiled. I'm not. I'm still just me. Molten cords of tendon flesh, a single cell in thickness, fins and scoops and graceful curves for gliding through dark water, throat of brass and eyes of crystal, all wrapped in pressure bubble. 6 tentacles, therefore when I willed them, a mouth of teeth so sharp and clean, gums of pure peach health. Muscles trim and smooth and fast, yet changeable into more. A polyhedron shifting faces, a dancing star in my core. Those words do not do justice to what I'd seen through abyssal senses. As my insensate body had twitched and jerked in Lozzie's cradling arms on the bathroom floor, I'd seen the side of me I'd brought back from the abyss, and in the end, it was just me. Me, translated to the mathematical potential of the abyssal intercellular matrix. Abyssal eyes did not look back at me, because I wasn't even looking at a reflection. I was merely gazing down at my own body, flesh and blood and bone redefined in wave-particle duality in polymorphic infinity. The only way my mind could interpret the sheer overwhelming euphoria was to turn it into metaphor, the same way it had when I'd swam the ocean beyond. It was beautiful. I was beautiful. I'd been such an idiot. 7 Shades of Sunlight had exaggerated slightly, probably for dramatic effect. I was not the perfect amalgam she had shown me. My physical body was still scrawny and weak, a seed that needed water and sunlight if it was to act as a proper anchor to the real. My shuddering abyssal flesh was still tender and raw, even so many weeks after bursting the membrane back into reality, flushed with vitality but in need of stimulation, acknowledgement, exercise. But flaws didn't matter. Imperfections were nothing. Beneath my skin, I was what I was meant to be. I was Homo abyssus. I stared and ran hands over my flexing abdomen and shuddering flanks, encircled the roots of tentacles which came and went at will, stroked sharp spines and giggled at the sensitive flesh between my legs. I blinked nictitating membranes back and forth across all black eyeballs, saw in infrared and ultraviolet and other spectra we do not know. I cracked vertebrae in limbs I cannot name, measured the levels of chemicals and enzymes and hormones in my bloodstream and my organs, puffed my flesh with toxin, drained it and replaced it with the healing properties of a resonant purr. Lozzie swears up and down all I did was twitch and judder, but I know what I saw. I sensed her too, her hands cradling my head, her presence behind me, the hint of shining starlight flesh and the whisper of a fey voice. I came up for air 5 minutes later, according to her, it felt more like an hour. "It's me," I croaked in a weak little voice, tears of release running down my cheeks. "It's me. It was always me. It you." Lozzie giggled, wiping the sweat from my forehead with the end of her sleeve. The bathroom floor served as a most welcoming place to rest, as I was drained by the experience in more than one way. For a long moment Lozzie let me drift with my head in her lap. I stared up at the bathroom ceiling in the old, peeling paint. Eventually, without having to explain myself in words, Lozzie helped me struggle up to a sitting position. Luckily, using abyssal senses had not triggered any kind of sympathetic manifestation of pneumosomatic tentacles or worse, so while I was drained and tired, I was not ravenously hungry or about to pass out. And I was happy. "Heathy. Are you okay?" Lozzie steadied me with hands on my shoulders as I sat there, wavering and looking down at my body. "Rain will be very upset with me if I let you fall over and bang your head, so I'm going to be very careful not to let you fall over and bang your head. Okay. Okay. Okay." With clumsy hands and numb fingers, I lifted up my t-shirts and touched my belly and hips, stuck my arms under my clothes to feel my own physical body, the rush of my blood beneath my skin, the gurgle of my guts, the thudding of my heartbeat. "It was me all along," I croaked at myself. "Of course it was." Lozzie chirped, bobbing her head from side to side like a curious little bird. "I thought you kind of knew." I shook my head, then looked up at her as her words dawned on me. "What Sevens showed us is that what you see when you look at me, Lozzie." Lozzie did a one-eyed squint. "I'm not like Sevens. No two pairs of eyes are exactly the same, but I've always thought you're beautiful, Heather. Before the swim, and then after it too. You think you changed, but you didn't. You've always been you, and you has always been good." She patted my chest and forehead and thighs. "And you're pretty and cool and sparkling, whatever you keep thinking inside your head." "I guess I am pretty," sparkling, dot. I tried to giggle too, not a noise I was too familiar with. Lozzie and I put our heads together, like a pair of small animals in a burrow, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I made sense. The dysphoria was still present, but now I knew the truth, and nothing could touch that. Even if I couldn't see it 99% of time, hidden below the surface of my skin, past sight and sense on the abyssal wavelength of oceanic metaphor, it was there. I was not broken wreckage, not irreconcilably insane from a visit to the abyss. I was homo abyssus, my pain came from the mismatch of my flesh, and when seen through the right eyes, I could be beautiful. Phantom limbs wrapped around Lozzie's shoulders, and I simply let them. They tugged on the bruises in my sides as real, physical muscles tried to compensate for abyssal truth. The pain was sweet, which was a bit of a mad thing to think, but it was true. I'm going to go to the gym with Rain, I croaked as Lozzie nuzzled my neck. I'm going to get fit, and run, and learn to. I sniffed hard. I saw me, Lozzie. I've been so stupid. How could I, all this time, and I have to move, I have to, all this time spent on me, I need to help Maisie, not sit around navel-gazing and dash. No. Lozzie tooted and pulled back. Bodies are important. I blinked at her, then nodded, too weak to turn this moment of victory into a self-pity session, or worse, beating myself up for not figuring everything out overnight and rescuing Maisie after breakfast. I gazed at Lozzie for a long moment, and wondered what she might look like through abyssal eyes. I cast my mind back to the periphery of what I'd seen of myself earlier, and recalled hints of something behind me, something made of fragile star-spun glass and the tinkle of tiny stones on metal. Lozzie just blinked at me with big sleepy eyes, turned her head sideways, and smiled an elfin little smile. I should get back to bed, I laughed softly. But I think I'm too buzzed, as Rain would say. Lozzie stroked my head, nodding. We can stay here a while. It's safe in the bathroom. No spooky creeping night preem to find me. Night preem? I asked. Lozzie shrugged, impish mischief on her lips. Where's 7 Shades, anyway? I asked, glancing around the shabby little room. I need to thank her, I really do. I think you have a truce now. Lozzie chirped. I wish she'd stayed though, I wanted to see her with her clothes off. I blinked at her in surprise, and Lozzie stuck her tongue out. Not like that, dum-dum. She's pretty, I like her. I wanna see under the mask. Fair enough. I turned to the empty air. Thank you, Sevens. Thank you, Seveny. Lozzie chorused with me, loud enough to bring the night preem down on us. 20 minutes later or an hour and 20, I wasn't sure, I think I fell asleep on Lozzie's shoulder for a good few minutes. She helped me to my feet and we padded together through the dark upstairs hallway and into mine and Rain's bedroom. Lozzie tucked me back into bed, but before she could even finish pulling the covers up, I was snuggling into Rain's front not only with my hips and arms, but with half a dozen phantom limbs that I now knew were not mere brain ghosts, but an echo of the truth beneath my flesh. And as I drifted off to sleep, wrapped for the first time in months in the euphoria of truth, I knew what I had to do. I knew what I was, now I must learn to use it. We have a truce with 7 Shades of Sunlight, I told Evelyn the following morning. I told her and Rain a great many things that morning, some of them inexpressible in human language, or at least difficult to express at high speed, especially without the luxury of emotional breaks or anything in my belly. Rain had sensed my manic mood the moment I'd woken up, how I'd wriggled out of bed and grabbed her in a hug, laughing through the painful twinges in my flanks and the way my bruises knocked the wind out of me when I bent over too quickly. Evelyn saw it in my face as she frowned at me over a bowl of cereal, as I all but bounced into the kitchen, feeling like I was channeling too much Lozzie. Wait, hold up, important part you keep glossing over, there were 2 of you? Rain asked, paused in the act of trying to get me to eat a bite of cereal bar. Full body style. There's always been 2 of me. I felt a giggle in my throat, unbidden, an unfamiliar feeling. There's Maisie. Yeah, but Rain wiggled her eyebrows. You know. TCH, I tooted, but couldn't keep the smile off my face. You wouldn't. 7 Shades wasn't actually me. You've changed your tune on her, Rain. I thought you, well, disliked her, after what we saw. She's put a smile on your face, Heather. I'm not going to pretend to fully understand, but you seem happier than in months. It's like she's high on blue Skittles, Evelyn grumbled, but then she added, good for you, Heather. It's simple. I laughed again, and wouldn't stay still, fiddling with a cereal bowl even though Rain was literally following me around the kitchen with a cup of tea and a plate of toast, trying to tempt me to either eat or sit down or both. It was always just me. It still hurts, but it's so good to know that I am what I am. Maybe I was always this way, maybe the abyss was just a catalyst, maybe it's the eye's fault, but I don't care anymore. And I feel ready. This is what I'm supposed to be. And it's stupid, it's horrendously silly. I feel like one of those people on the internet who believe they're dragons or ice fairies or something and dash. Rain shot Evelyn a raised eyebrow. You telling Heather about the dark corners of the internet? Evelyn shrugged. Me, Preem intoned from by the workshop door. Yes, I waved that point down. Preem was reading things on my laptop on Wikipedia, it was very fun. Anyway, the point is, we have a truce now. We need to get everyone together, go back to Carcosa, as soon as we can. We're going to get those books and I'm going to figure out how to locate my sister. Today, yes, we can go back to the library. Is that doable? Saturday, Evelyn grumbled. I still need time to retarget the gate. And do not tell Twill we're going back. My enthusiasm hit a brick wall of sudden anxiety. No Twill. She has coursework due, Evelyn said, holding my gaze without faltering. She seemed colder than last night, somehow hollow around the eyes. This week and the next. I have extracted a promise that she will focus on it, mostly by guilt-tripping her. Don't undermine that. Oh, I dash. You aren't the only one who had a rough night, Heather. Then we can wait, can't we? We can, No, we don't want to wait, Evelyn said with a long-suffering sigh. You don't want to wait, do you, Heather? Not really, no. Every day we delay is one less day of action, one less day of working on how to counter the eye, Evelyn said. We go in, we shove Saldis' head in a toilet, we get the books. Leaving Twill out means nothing. Liar, pants on fire, Preem sing-songed. And you can shut up, Evelyn grumbled at her, too worn out to snap. Something sagged in her expression. Rain finally stopped waving toast at me and noticed that something was wrong. Evie, she asked. Evie, something happened. What did Twill say? She upset you? Practical decisions, that's all. And it's none of your business. An hour deeper into the library of Carcosa and we had acquired 2 out of 3 books. Now we were closing on the 3rd. Working the catalog system as Saldis had described the squid-faced librarians proved both easier and more disgusting than we'd envisioned. The trick was to feed them books constantly, which Lozzie took to with gleeful giggles, despite my visible concern. They're always in communion, all of them, that's how they draw on the existing organization of every volume in the library, Saldis had explained. She'd requested we interrupt one of the shuffling creatures in the clearing, offer it a book taken from the shelves, to start the necessary chain reaction. Communion with what? Evelyn had asked, voice sharp. Saldis shrugged and pulled a face. I do not care to know. Does one observe the butcher at work, or merely enjoy the meat? We'd followed her instructions, lured a squid-faced librarian creature with books pulled from the shelves, and watched as it had shoved them into its tentacle hole one by one. The books are not actually moved, you understand. Saldis went on, with little bored sighs and waves of a hand as she resumed her seat in the sphere machine's core. The internal parts of one thrall are not merely similar to all others, like the innards of one pig resemble all other pigs, they are the very same innards. But the active overlap only occurs when they need to move a book from one position to another. Quantum superposition? Evelyn asked with a professional frown. Shared guts. Lozzie chirped, and handed the squid face another book. Saldis waved a hand and pulled a bored grimace. I don't pretend to understand, little Englisher, and frankly I don't feel like vivisecting one of them to find out. One can bash them around all one likes, but insert a single fingertip past their skin, into the organs, and you're likely not to get it back. Now, see? She nodded at the squid face Lozzie had finished feeding, which stood before us in a moment of silent contemplation, as if waiting to be addressed. It knows the position of all the other books relevant for the reshelving of the ones it has just communed for the correct location of. She smiled and smacked her lips. Now that's a sentence. Your English did quite well there, MMM. Stop yammering, wizard, Jing purred. Yes, please, Saldis, I added. We are on a time limit. Being here is tough on all of us. Saldis rolled her eyes and leaned on a hand. Very well, Lady Morel. This is much more reliable than asking a scrum of thralls to dredge up what little scraps they have in their local meat, yes. Go on, ask it for the books. Ask away, and ye shall receive. If not, feed it more until the net catches what you desire. The first tome we reached 25 minutes later, following the slow shuffle plod of the librarian through the endless labyrinth of Carcosa's bookshelves. It didn't point our way as the gaggle of followers had, but simply led on, up to the next floor and deep into a spiral tangle of overflowing shelves. Hundreds of books lay in avalanche piles here, thick leather-bound tomes and ancient scrolls and scraps of unbound manuscripts in Latin and Greek and less recognizable languages, but the creature neatly picked its way along a clear path around the textual rockfalls. Evelyn insisted we continue using the method of throwing cloth-wrapped nuts, testing for that which was not conducive to human life or terrestrial matter. So Preem threw, and our caution was proven warranted. The librarian creature passed unharmed through patches of clear ground that compressed the cloth-wrapped nut into nothing, or whisked it out of the air on dark semi-translucent claws. On those occasions, we had to find our own route around the obstruction to rejoin our guide. Beyond the northern ice by Magnhildredal was exactly where the creature led us, in the middle row of a stack of early medieval texts, bound in soft, pale leather which made my skin crawl to look at, written in a tongue not unlike Old English. This is not supposed to exist, Evelyn breathed, voice shaking as Preem had carefully extracted the book and cradled it in her hands. The doll demon had cracked the cover, checked this was indeed the genuine article and wouldn't hollow out the mind of anybody who gazed upon the words, then laid the book inside the less lethal of the two sports bags, with mechanical gentleness. What does that mean? I asked softly. All copies were destroyed, Evelyn said, her eyes following the book with naked hunger as Preem tucked it away. Doll was excommunicated, executed by drowning, and well. That book shouldn't be. She swallowed hard. Come on, we have further to go. Yes, much further. Saldis accompanied us as well, rolling along well behind the rear of the group in her gray sphere machine. Back in the clearing it had folded up its strange blossoms, sucked the stair stems and balcony leaves back into itself like a strange sea creature reabsorbing expelled organs. Saldis' boy toy sculpture now lay in a side seat next to her, visible through the peeled open front of the machine as she lounged inside. The sphere clicked along behind us, Saldis only occasionally smothering a laugh at our cautious, creeping antics. You think this is amusing? Evelyn had shot back at her after the third laugh, as Preem had watched a cloth-wrapped nut bounce along the floorboards. You want to go first for us? I suppose you have some better way of avoiding the hazards out here, do you? Don't mind me. Saldis waved a hand. Far be it for me to leapfrog your process. You do you, Miss Say. Whenever I looked back, Saldis favored me with an excited smile, but mostly let us get on with our book borrowing. Les Voix de Gaules, written by an anonymous Parisian magician in 1803, elicited just as much fascination from Evelyn as the first book, despite the relative slimness of the cheaply bound volume, and the absurd cover illustration of a cavorting ghoulish figure with a gnawed bone between its teeth. "Let me guess," Rain said. "All copies burned? Author burned at the stake?" "What?" "No, no," Evelyn muttered, distracted as Preem handed her the book after checking, and Evelyn greedily leafed through the pages, eyes working back and forth at high speed. "Only 3 copies ever published. Referenced by other books, but I wasn't sure it existed. Grave magic, flesh stuff." She shook her head and frowned. "The necessary formula for hiding of human flesh is meant to be in here, even from gazes such as the eye, but my French is atrocious, I'll have to translate it line by line. This is necessary. We need this. We do. Evie." I said her name out loud, because she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. Her voice was shaking. "I'm fine," she said with a huff, pulling herself together and handing the book back to Preem. "Let's carry on. Feed our friend here some tomes. The faster we get the last book, the faster we can be out of here." By the time we reached the 3rd book, Evelyn was the only one of us not beginning to buckle under the strain of being in this place, of existing outside. I was getting twitchy, my phantom limbs trying to guard every approach to our little group. Zheng had grown silent and intense behind me. Rain was pulled taut inside her motorcycle jacket, every muscle pumped with stress hormones. Preem kept blinking too much. Even Lozzie had stopped bouncing from foot to foot as she walked, hand in hand with me. Evelyn had that wide-eyed look, that old look, that hungry look, as she stomped on into the darkness. The last known location of the 3rd and final book, The Testament of Heliopolis, an anonymous translation of some ancient Greek scrap, was 2 floors up and far toward the back wall of the library canyon, where a wide area of the library had long ago suffered some kind of collapse. As we crept inch by inch through the tangle of bookshelves, an open space revealed itself, like a rubble-clogged crater ahead, though the rubble was all splintered wood and piles of books in jumbled heaps. Though it did little to alleviate the oppressive air of the library, the slow appearance of a wide open space did ease off the claustrophobia of the library stacks. "Looks like somebody set off a bomb," Rain muttered as we drew almost level with the collapsed area. "I could do worse, Yashu," Zheng rumbled. "Here it should be right here," Evelyn was saying, eyes roving the nearest bookshelf, across the neatly stacked spines of leather-bound, crumbling books. "This part is alphabetized, but I don't see it." She glanced at the squid-faced librarian, who had stopped and turned toward us, waiting for the next instruction. "Has the thing made a mistake? Do we need to feed it more?" Preem noticed it first. She stepped past Evelyn and reached for the shelf, into a shadowed gap between 2 books. It was only then I realized that the dust on the shelf had been disturbed. A book had been removed. Recently. Preem's hand drew back the object which had lain in space once occupied by the Testament of Heliopolis. A clean white envelope. My eyes felt like they were going to pop out of my head. Rain went tense all over, as if it might be a letter bomb. Evelyn made a choked sound deep in her throat. Lozzie squeezed my hand. Saldis was standing up in her sphere machine, trying to see. Zheng laughed. "It's for us," Preem intoned after a moment. Written on the front of the envelope, in messy looping handwriting, with the unmistakable blue ink of cheap biro, was a single sentence. "To Miss Evelyn Say."